We are about to begin today's proceedings. And while everyone is taking their seat, let me introduce myself. A very good morning to you all. My name is Titilayo Oyinson. I've been in the media for over 15 years now as a radio host and TV host. I just ended one of my programs this morning, Wake Up Nigeria, at TV Continental. And it's more than a pleasure, more than an honor being your host this morning. For those of you who are coming here for the first time, this is the Nigerian Stock Exchange International Women's Day Symposium. The theme for today is Press for Progress, but it is a theme that internationally is being carried throughout the year. And indeed, as women, we have been pressing for progress for a long time. And I have a feeling we will continue to press for progress, even when we do get that progress that we need. There's always more room for improvement. But some information about the stock exchange. Now, the Nigerian Stock Exchange services the largest economy in Africa and is championing the development of African financial markets. The Nigerian Stock Exchange is committed to adopting the highest level of international standards and continues to evolve in order to meet the needs of its valued customers to achieve the highest level of competitiveness. It's an open, professional, and vibrant exchange connecting Nigeria, Africa, and the world. As part of the exchange's commitment to gender empowerment, it has incorporated several initiatives into its operations, I'm glad to hear, including gender diversity at all levels, an inclusive work environment, provision of a creche, equal pay across same grade levels, amongst others. I think they deserve a round of applause for that. Additionally, the exchange is committed to playing its part to accelerate the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, which seeks to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2030. In furtherance of this, they commemorate International Women's Day every year. Now, this is the 4th event, and I think I came at the right time. Okay, so if you are a woman in the house, please give yourself a nice, warm round of applause. Before we continue, we at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, we take seriously our safety, and I would like to call on Mrs. Bukola Shogbon of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to give a safety briefing.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. At the Stock Exchange, we take safety as a priority. And as part of our health and safety policy, I'd like to make a few announcements before we proceed in the program. So the first one is, at my right, behind the banner, there's an emergency stairway that we can take in the case of any form of emergency. Thank you so much for coming to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I hope you have a lovely time.
Okay, so in case of an emergency, please just leave your handbag on the floor as you run out, but not in the aisle. Yeah, just make sure no one trips over. All right, then. I think we need to move as quickly as possible because events like this do tend to go a bit long, but I think the best person to give the opening remarks isn't a woman, but a gentleman, a very distinguished one. Someone who Forbes listed him as one of the 10 most powerful men in Africa in 2015. Please give him. He has been the CEO and member of National Council for the Exchange since April 2011. His role, he's responsible for superintending the general working of the Exchange. But let's learn a bit more about him. Now, he is the president of African Securities Exchanges Association, chairman of the Central Securities Clearing System, PLC, the Clearing, Settlement and Depository for the Nigerian Capital Market, and chairman of the subsidiaries of the exchange. He's served as council member of the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, CIS, Global Agenda Council member of the World Economic Forum, board member of FMDQ, OTC, PLC. That's a lot of letters. And, of course, the National Pension Commission of Nigeria. I'm talking about none other than Mr. Oscar N. Onyema, OON, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As Compare was reading out all of that, I was about to start blushing, and then luckily she stopped. Your Excellency, Dame Abimbola Emanuela Fashola, former First Lady of Lagos State, Chairman Len NGO, as well as Ella Cares, Her Excellency Ms. Laura Bufield, Deputy British High Commissioner. We have members of our council that are expected here. I see already Hajia Binta Bello Ismail. Distinguished speakers and panelists, good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before I go through my prepared remarks, I just wanted to find out a few things so that we can calibrate the discussions properly. The first is, how many of you know when International Women's Day became adopted as a global day to be observed? It's by show of hand. Okay, so the United Nations adopted it in 1975, but before then, different countries have observed International Women's Day, especially the socialist and communist countries. But the thing that I found interesting as I researched for today's discussion is that the first Women's Day was actually observed in New York City. Those of you that know me know why it's an interesting tidbit for me. And then the communist countries, especially the Soviet Union, led the push for equality, and throughout the early 20th century, so 1917, 1918, they just kept pushing the envelope. So I thought that was a tidbit that you might find interesting. Development can come from any part of the world. So it is with great honor that I welcome you all to the Nigerian Stock Exchange for this year's International Women's Day Symposium themed Press for Progress. This is the fourth edition the NSE will be hosting. Allow me a brief moment to acknowledge the following organizations that have joined forces with us to host today's symposium, and they are the Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative, United Nations Women, United Nations Global Compact, International Finance Corporation, the World Federation of Exchanges, WIMBIs, and Women in ETFs. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to our special guest of honor, our keynote speaker, panel discussants, our moderators, and all our guests for your presence in spite of your very busy schedules. It is important to state that Press for Progress is not just another theme for another edition of the International Women's Day. It is a call to action to spur women and men into taking bold steps towards closing the gender gap. It is saddening to note that with over 100 years of devoting a day to celebrating the achievements of women and discussing steps towards achieving gender parity and social justice for women, the World Economic Forum, in its 2017 Gender Gap Report, averred that our dream of achieving parity across gender required more than 200 years to become a reality. What a wait. How many of us will be here in 200 years? Let me underscore the imperative of bridging gender inequality by highlighting that the number of years required has been on the increase. The World Economic Forum first stated that it will take 113 years to bridge the gender gap in 2015, then increased to 169 years in 2016, and then to 217 years in 2017. As one of Africa's foremost securities exchanges and member of the Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative, which is a UN initiative for exchanges around the world, we are deeply committed to leveraging our position to accelerate the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which seeks to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2030. In truth, the NSC itself must be seen to walk the talk. As you may know, we have a female to male employee ratio of 1 to 2, and we are taking key steps to increase the number of women in our employ, especially those in leadership positions. Early this year, we promoted Ms. Tinu Adeyawe to Executive Director of Regulations. She's here. And consequently, she's the number 2 person at the exchange. More importantly, the exchange took steps to address the lack of female representation on our National Council, which is the highest governing body at the exchange, by electing 3 eminent female members at the last annual general meeting. We have one of them here today. So today we have 23% female representation as against 0% representation in 2016. Last year, we initiated the NSC GEM, Gender Empowerment Men, a group of male employees at the NSC who act as mentors to young female employees, helping them to navigate the workplace and grow their careers. Under the 4 pillars of our CSR program, namely workplace, marketplace, community, and environment, we continue to seek ways to celebrate women and play our part in closing the gender gap. In the last 3 years, our NSC National Essay Competition has been won by girls, and the last edition was a female top 3 finish, which has prompted me to now start considering whether I should declare a state of emergency with regards to boys in our educational institutions. In October last year, we donated a fully functional school to support IDPs in Maiduguri, Borno State, Mansandari, Alamdari, Model Nursery and Primary School, Maiduguri. Of the 210 admitted students, 89 are girls, a number which we are committed to increasing. We also use our closing gong ceremonies to promote the achievement of women where those achievements align with the exchange's objectives. Only recently, we invited Azizat Oshoala, the current CAF Confederation of African Football, Female Footballer of the Year, and also the all-female first African bobsled team to the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, amongst others, to sound the closing gong. The paradigm is shifting globally about the nature of today's event. It has been advised, rightly so, that men must be present in the room when gender parity is being discussed. Today, we are aligning with this invaluable insight as follows. 1, I will stay through the course of today's event. After my opening speech, I will listen to debates, participate as much as possible, and stay until the end of the event. 2, we are introducing an all-male panel to be moderated by a woman. And 3, we have encouraged several men to attend today's event. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you all to participate in this session fully. As we press for progress in our careers, we must also commit to press for progress in all areas of our lives. We cannot give up, not now, not ever. We must push and push until we progress and break the norms that hold us from reaching our targets in gender equality. We must press together. We must progress together. No matter the storm, for as long as we are together, be rest assured we will overcome. Let me use this opportunity to thank our product sponsors, Olori Cosmetics, Zaran Cosmetics Limited, Shredder Gang, 1000 Reasons Confectionaries, Bodyline Fitness and Gym Limited, Kinabuti Fashion Initiative, and Sugar Plum Concepts for the great items they have provided to spice up this event. Thank you for your kind attention, and happy International Women's Day.
I think we can do better than that, ladies. All right, so we're moving swiftly along. If you are just arriving, please get comfortable. Take your seat as quickly as possible so that we don't distract the other people who are getting into this event. They're getting into the mood. Okay, so whenever I see a room filled with women, I take pride in the fact that they always look well put together. They always show this inner confidence, despite the amount of traffic they had to go through to get here, and probably the number of school runs they had to do, dropping off one child after the other at different schools. But if I take this microphone over, we won't move on with the event, will we? Coming up next, we have the keynote speech. And to give the keynote speech is Laurie Bufils. Ms. Laurie Bufils has been the Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria since February 2017. Previously, she was the head of the UK Department of International Development in Rwanda. In this capacity, she managed a $100 million portfolio of programs focusing on economic development, governance, social sectors. Prior to holding that position, she worked in various positions in the UK government. She was lead strategic advisor working for the British Prime Minister in his role as co-chair of the United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on the post-2015 development agenda. She ran DFID's Department for Overseas Territories. She led a team working on climate change. She's had her fingers in a lot of pies. I have to say, she's someone who I am so interested in hearing what she has to say. Please join me in welcoming once again Ms. Laurie Bufils.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those kind words. And I'm so happy to be here. Your Excellency, Mrs. Fashola, President of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, members of the Council, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute honor for me to be here. I'm very grateful for the invitation, and I am thrilled to be in the company of so many inspiring women and men, transforming the way that we manage businesses, we run our economy, and the way that we think about gender relations. Let me start by saying Happy International Women's Day to everyone in the room, men and women alike. It's a fantastic occasion to celebrate the wonderful things that women contribute to our societies, to reflect about their talent, their agency, their creativity, their contribution, resilience, and power. But of course, it's also an important opportunity for us to reflect on what is holding us back, and indeed why that matters. And we all know and feel very intimately why it matters. In many ways, it's about fairness. It's about us being the best we can be, being able to dream, to have hopes, and to realize them, and to be the people that we know we can be and to fulfill our potential. But given that we are in the Nigerian Stock Exchange today, I'm going to reflect on one issue, which is that of the economy. In Nigeria, like everywhere else, we need economic growth. We need inclusive, dynamic economic growth in the years to come. We know this will require hard work, talent, ingenuity, skills, different perspectives and experience at the table coming together to make decisions. One of the ingredients for this is staring us right in the face, and that is unleashing the economic power of women, bringing the world's largest excluded group into the field. And yet, we're not doing it, not just in Nigeria, but across the world. We know from decades of data that encouraging women's participation in the economy is right and smart. If you include women in the economy, poverty goes down and GDP goes up. Indeed, a growing body of research is beginning to demonstrate that companies run by diverse teams perform better. Last year, a big study of more than 21,000 public companies in 91 countries by the Peterson Institute and EY found that bringing more women into high management boosted profitability. It said a company with 30% female leadership could expect to add up to 6% to its net margin when compared with a similar business with no female leaders. McKinsey just published an update of the 2015 research looking at 754 companies across all sectors across the globe. It made a similar point even more starkly. It noted that it's very critical that when women are a critical mass, 20% or more at the decision-making level, it is this that is the most correlated with higher performance. In other words, it's not workforce parity alone that matters for value creation, it is participation at the top. And that's where we most often fail. We have women in junior positions, but not at the top. So I'm really delighted to hear about the appointment that you made this year for the new executive director of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. But I think that just making the business case for the economic empowerment of women is insufficient. Business is so influential in our culture and in our communities that to endorse diversity and inclusion simply because it is good for business undersells the issue. Having women at the top in the workplace is a society issue, not just a business issue. We should never lose sight of the fact that the business community and indeed public sector bodies can cultivate real change for our society from the inside out. I feel very strongly that both the private sector and the public sector can and must be agents of change on these issues. We are at the cutting edge of how people work and learn, and I believe we have both an economic and a moral obligation to lead by example and push the boundaries. So it's important, but where are we at? Well, we know that when women do participate in the economy, more often than not, they tend to be stuck in low-paying, low-status jobs. Globally, women only earn 3/4 of what men earn for the same job and with the same education levels. Women also tend to be overrepresented in less secure jobs, such as informal, temporary, or part-time work. This is partly because they want more flexible work options, but partly also because they are locked out of higher status careers. Women make up only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs. They account for only 24% of senior management positions around the world. In finance, the glass ceiling has barely cracked. Compared to the available talent pool, there is still a large gap between the representation of men and women in leadership positions in banks and bank supervision agencies across the world. The really bad news is that things don't seem to be getting better, and indeed the president of the stock exchange reminded us of the World Economic Forum report that just came out last year, telling us that it will take 217 years, if my memory serves me right, to reach equality in pay. And not only that, but that things have got worse over the last year. So this report by the WEF, they do on an annual basis, and it's going to take longer. I don't say this to discourage you, but to say that progress is not linear, and that progress should not be taken for granted, and that it requires constant work and effort and creativity by all of us. The report that we were referring to from the WEF talks not just about pay, but also economic participation, educational attainment, health, and survival, and political empowerment. Out of 141 countries, Nigeria comes out at 118. But there are things to celebrate. On life expectancy and sex ratio at birth, for example, Nigeria has near parity. Where Nigeria falls short is first and foremost in political empowerment. It ranks 136 out of 144 countries in terms of share of women in parliament. We know that there is a woeful lack of women in upper reaches of politics and government. We need to find a way to make politics more attractive to women. And of course, in the realm of jobs and the economy, we know that we can do better. There are large gender gaps in economic opportunities and outcomes. Women earn less, have fewer assets, bear the burden of unpaid work and care, and they are largely contracted in vulnerable and low-paying economic activities. Only 15% of Nigerian women have a bank account or own land or a house, compared to 85% of men. Only 7.2% of women own land they farm on, resulting in limited access to finance. And today, as part of the IMF Article 4 consultations, a new report was published, and it involves a selected issues paper chapter on gender equality. It estimates that if Nigeria were to raise its gender inclusivity to the level of regional peers, just regional peers, it could add an average of 1.25 percentage points to annual GDP growth. In addition, decreasing gender inequality could also help mitigate income inequality and help boost economic diversification. So, clearly, the global economy is not using its productive resources very effectively. It is tossing away economic growth that we really can't afford to toss away. I don't know what you think, but it seems to me that it's a no-brainer that we should be investing more in women, and indeed that we should be looking at ways to turbocharge the economic empowerment of women so that it speeds up at an unprecedented level. And the good news is that we know how to do it. There are three main pillars that I would like to talk about: economic policies, laws and institutions, and attitudes and culture. In the policy area, I think the evidence now shows that the public and the private sector alike can support women by adopting more pro-female, pro-family approaches and policies. This can involve a move from family to individual taxation, providing more affordable childcare and parental leave, allowing more flexible working arrangements. Companies have a lot of freedom in this space to innovate, and a lot is already going on, as we've just heard from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. One policy that I'd like to mention, just because the president of the Stock Exchange mentioned all-male panel, is that I think with the exception of panels talking about women's rights and the role that men have to play in supporting women's rights, we should never have all-male panels. Just last week, I was in an event, and I won't tell you which one because you will know many of the people that were there, but an event talking about issues related that affect women, and there was a panel of 8 men. I think one thing that everyone could sign up to today, and in particular men, is to never be on an all-male panel. There's no, in my mind, there can be no justification for all-male panels in the 21st century. Except when it comes to thinking about how men can contribute to women's rights and gender equality. On laws and institutions, they are equally important, of course. And we've learned that gender gaps are lower than when men and women are treated equally under the law, in terms of inheritance, property, and economic opportunity. More specifically, the evidence suggests that what seems to matter most is equal property rights for married women, default joint titling for married couples, and women's freedom to pursue a profession, get a job, or open a bank account without prejudice or partiality. And changing attitudes and behavior, well, that seems like it's the hardest part. Sometimes sexism is so pervasive and institutionalized that we don't see it. And sometimes we're just so used to it that we don't bother to fight it. And I know that some of us, probably a lot of us in this room, have a lifetime of practice taking indignities in our stride. So much so that we are used to these indignities and we accept them and we don't think they affect us, but they do, and we must address them. We must not be allowed to believe our voice is any less significant than that of men. We must not be allowed to believe that our looks are in any way relevant in the workplace. We must not tolerate ever being devalued. We must not ever allow ourselves or our colleagues to be patronized, interrupted, and put down on the basis of their gender. We must encourage and support our sisters and take strides to systematically speak out against sexism. And we must reset the table so women are no longer required to accept or adapt to discrimination and sexism at work. If I may, here I would like to spend a moment reflecting on sexual harassment. It's the year to do that, of course. We've had a year where the extent of this scourge has been highlighted, not least through the Harvey Weinstein scandal, but through so many movements across the world, and the Me Too movement in particular. We should never have to feel uncomfortable, fearful, or compromised in the workplace. Ever. Full stop. For women, if you're being harassed, even in a small way, that builds up and that wears you down. We shouldn't have to negotiate between what we want to achieve and what it takes to achieve it. We must work to create a working environment in which employees in general and women in particular feel safe. Changing attitudes and practices is a responsibility we all bear when we speak to our friends, our sons, our daughters, or colleagues. It's about talking about equality and respect. It's about sharing the burden of housework. It's about redefining what it is to be a modern man, one that is kind, thoughtful, supportive, and respectful. I'm nearing the end of my talk. You'll be happy to hear. For me, economic empowerment is massively important because it comes right to the heart of women's rights. It's about jobs, and it's also about access to bank accounts. It's about tackling violence against girls and women. It's about addressing and overcoming discriminatory laws and reducing the burden of unpaid domestic work. All of these things need to be done, and I believe that we all have a role to play in our daily lives in supporting this through our communities, through our workplace, through our engagements, and our businesses. For our societies to be increasingly equal, we need champions, and we must partner with men and women alike to create a critical mass demanding and progressing change. Indeed, we need to work with bold men, such as the President of the Stock Exchange, who care about doing what's right for them and for the economy and for women, and who dare to disrupt the established order. Men who will set up maternity leave, set up creches in the office, offer paternity leave as well as maternity leave, recognize and support the talent of women, and take pride in the success of the women they encourage. And we must not grow tired because change is not happening fast enough, or because there are trends that sometimes are reversed. We must not be afraid to rock the boat. We know we need more women on every table where decisions are made. We must push the private sector to do a lot better than it currently is. And we all, in each and every single one of us, have a role to play, as I just said, to press for progress. This progress is not inevitable. Sometimes it's one step forward and sometimes 2 steps back. But this is a battle we cannot afford to lose for ourselves, for our countries, and for the generations to come. We should never rest on our laurels. and we must always believe that we all have a role in changing the world, even if it's only a tiny bit at a time, because every tiny bit needed someone to change it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. I was taking notes at the back there. Once again, a round of applause for Laurie Bufors. Okay, so before we move along to our goodwill message, I just wanted to share a short story. So being in the media for over 15 years, I spent about 8 of those years on the radio. And after the 5th year, I applied for promotion, and I was told, you have 2 young children, it's not going to work. The 6th year came along, I applied again. They told me, oh, you don't have the qualifications. So I said, okay, I would love to go for some courses. And they said, we're not paying it for you. You have to find the money yourself. I took out loans, went abroad, studied, came back. 7th year, I applied again. I still wasn't promoted. Why? Because this time I had moved too far away from the office. You live too far away. That's what they said. The 8th year came around. I applied again. Silence. And then, as God would have it, you know, I got another amazing opportunity to be the host of a breakfast show that's revolutionizing breakfast TV in Nigeria, the first entertainment breakfast show, Wake Up Nigeria, where we talk about everything except politics. And I would love for anyone who's going through something similar to just, you know, be strong, keep going, keep applying, don't stop applying, don't stop pushing to move forward. You never know where it's going to be, when it's going to happen, but it will eventually happen. We have to keep pressing for progress. All right, so thank you. To give our goodwill message is someone I see as an amazing mentor, a woman of quiet dignity. She's a model of calm composure, and her humility it belies her status as the former First Lady of Lagos State. And now, Lagos State is not an easy state to be First Lady of, I can tell you. There's a lot of pressure behind there. And sometimes, you know, it's very, very encouraging to see how amazing she looks and how amazing we feel when we're in her presence. She's someone who is a dedicated humanitarian. She gives her time, expertise, resources to making a difference in the lives of people, especially the youth. And I can still remember when she gave birth to an initiative called LEARN, Lagos Empowerment and Resource Network, which was established to groom the youth to be more self-confident, socially responsible, and so much more. I would love for you to help give a warm welcome to none other than Her Excellency Dame Abimbola Fashola.
The CEO, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Oscar N. Uyema, OON, and his NSC team, Her Excellency, Ms. Laurie Bufors, the British Deputy High Commissioner, the keynote speaker, members of the Council of the NSC, distinguished and eminent panelists and participants. It gives me great pleasure to celebrate the International Women's Day with a theme, Press for Progress, here at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Lagos. I thank the CEO of the NSC, Mr. Oscar N. Uyema OON, and his team for inviting me. I commend the exchange for realizing that investing in women's empowerment in the workplace, marketplace, and community is of great importance to the growth and sustainability of businesses, and for identifying with us to mark this year's notable day set aside to celebrate women all over the world. I am going to take my own views from global, you know, all the spheres of life that we work in. I'm not going to base it on economic issues because we are here at the Stock Exchange. And thank you for inviting me because this is my first time of coming here. I've been everywhere, and this is my first time of coming here. In the past 2 decades of uninterrupted democratic government, we have seen our women attain various heights in business, entrepreneurship, financial empowerment, nurturing and inculcating good values in the younger generation, health, economy, entertainment, education, diversity in career, profession, lifestyle, to mention just a few. But I'll take it from the point that we're actually progressing. Don't you agree with me? Is there any progress in the lives of we, the women? There is. And I'll take it from those who own businesses and organizations and whatever companies they're running now. We have a women radio station, WFM 91.7. Do you know about that? And it's owned by Mrs. Tom Okewale Shonaya. We have Ebony Live TV station, owned by Ms. Muabude. We have TW and Genevieve Magazines, owned by Mrs. Adesua Oyenekoi and Mrs. Betty Rabo. There are also a number of women on various bank boards. For example, we have Mrs. Foluke Abdulrazak and Mrs. Onari Duke, either non-executive or directors. They're in the UBA, Mrs. Mosu Bele Olushoga, Access Bank, and one as chairman. I don't know if we have any other one, First Bank, Mrs. Ibukwa Woshika. So we're making progress. And I'm sure before 200 years, we will get there in Nigeria. We have a lot of women as judges, magistrates, police officers, in senior posts as well. Directors, event managers, entertainment, oil and gas, business, bakers, caterers, and what have you. And then we have the 3 women that have been appointed in the stock exchange as well. So we are making progress. I won't take it from that we are stagnant. We are not stagnant. We are making progress. For young girls and women to be included, we have various organizations such as WIMBIS, WISCA, and lots of NGOs that are contributing to changing the female story of inequality, insecurity at workplace, both public and private. We should press for progress in areas such as inheritance laws. We should speak and take action on abuse and violence against women, reduction on maternal and child mortality rate, insecurity. We should encourage women to embrace teaching to better our standards of living. We should encourage women to go into sports. We should encourage women to go into politics. I'm sure when you hear politics, you think I should be able to speak. But for us to grow in politics as women, I have always said it wherever I go. I've told them at Wimbies as well. They've made their mark in business. Let them start to make their mark in politics as well. And for us to grow in politics, we need to have our own party. For as long as we are joining the parties that the men have set up, we will never, because they would always request that you step down for somebody else. And you're not stepping down for a woman, you're going to step down for a man. So that I know for sure. And that is what usually happens. You have a lot of women who go in. They go for the local government chairman, they go for councillors, they go for everything. They have complained severally when we have functions on political, the political gathering and all that. And I thank KIND, the NGO KIND, that by Hafsat Abiola, she's worked a lot on it. And she's always helping the women, you know, come out, support them, mentor them. But when it gets to the last minute, the party chieftains will tell you, we believe more in this and we would win when this man is there. So until we have our own party, we would not be able to make our marks in politics. So let's start to think about that. Maybe we would have to set up our own parties. Let's start to look into that, because 2019 is around the corner. How many women do we have now in politics? How many women do we have in decision making, apart from the appointed, elected post? We can count by our fingers how many women we have in there. And so we should not shy away as well when it's time to become leaders in our workplace. Don't let us give excuses about the children, just like she gave now the master of ceremony. Onyesa, we should not do that. we should try as much as possible to attain that desired post that we need. And we can always prioritize and work. Because I think most women, what happens to us is we are always thinking about the home front. What happens to my children? What happens to my husband? What happens to this? What happens to that? You know, so let's start to think of how can we take care of that as well as balance what we are doing and our career. How can we take it to the top? As women, once we set our minds to do something, really, no one can stop us. However, we must obtain the right tools and the core competencies to deliver on our job desires. Women have come a long way to end these positions and are still working hard, as well as mentoring younger ones to fulfill their own purpose. So I'm sure we will get there. Gender parity and equality, we will get there before 200 years, because I don't think we'll be alive today, but we'll keep working and keep walking the talk. I'd like to encourage every woman to take a decision today that as we move up the ladder, hold on to another woman so that it is not lonely up there. Let us encourage every woman to be fully engaged, to be instrumental in developing the society as entrepreneurs, leaders, mothers, employers, and employees. I hereby wish every woman who has and is still impacting their environment, community, and the world at large to continue in this pursuit vigorously, as it will boost the statistics of women who have made a difference in the 21st century and change the narrative of our gender. Happy Women's Day to all our lovely sisters, aunties, mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers. Once again, I thank the CEO of NSC and his team, and congratulations, Mrs. Awe. And I wish the distinguished keynote speaker, eminent guest, all participants, our panelists, successful panel discussions to be delivered by our world-class professionals in their chosen fields. Congratulations, women, and let's keep walking the talk. I was discussing with Mr. Oyema that how many women companies do we have listed in NSC? And he can't think of any. We need to work that out.
Oh, wow. I think we should keep it going just a little bit more. Okay, so it's very interesting to note that this event is on time. I've been looking at the lineup and everyone has been giving clear, concise, quick speeches that have been very impactful. So a round of applause for all of us for being here on time, getting this done on time. And I think we should keep to time as we begin our first panel session. So the moderator of this session is Irene Robinson Anyonwale. And the name or the title of the panel today is Gender Equality, Business Growth and Economic Development, Finding the Connection. Hopefully with the panel today, we will be able to find the connection. I would like to invite Irene Robinson Anyonwale to take the stage. Thank you. And I'll be leaving her to invite the panelists on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the members of our panel are Ms. Patience Bongiwa Kunene, the Executive Director at the Board of the World Bank, representing Angola, Nigeria, and South Africa. The second member of the panel is Mrs. Olajobi Makinwa, Chief Africa of the UN Global Compact. The next member of the panel is Mrs. Lillian Olubi, CEO, Primera Securities Limited. Primera Africa Limited. The next member of our panel is Ms. Tinu Awe, the Executive Director, Regulation, Nigerian Stock Exchange. The last member of the panel, but definitely not the least, is Mrs. Bekeme Olowola, CEO, CSR in Action. So we must commend once again the keynote speaker, as well as Her Excellency, Dame Abimbola Fashola, because they have done a fantastic job of opening this discussion. Now, before we start, I just want to point out some of the statistics that the keynote speaker had pointed out to us, both from a global perspective as well as from a Nigeria perspective. So we have been told that 15% of women in Nigeria, only 15% of women own bank accounts or have access to assets. We've been told that when it comes to political empowerment of women, Nigeria is 136 out of 144. So from the very first question, and this will go across the whole members of the panel, is to say, does gender inequality exist in Nigeria in the political, business, and corporate world? And when you were starting out, or in the course of your career, and even till date, because every single person here has attained a certain level, management level, decision makers. You are the examples that we are talking about in terms of how progress has been made. So even till date, are you experiencing gender inequality?
Thank you very much. Happy International Women's Day to everybody. I think maybe the question, does gender inequality exist? Should we even be asking it? Because it's there. It's effect in all of African countries. It's also effect everywhere. As it has been pointed out, I am in the World Bank, in the board, representing Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola. There are only 5 women at the board in the World Bank. The board has got 25 seats, only 5. So that's a clear example. It's not about Nigeria, it's about the world. Things are just not moving fast enough. When we are starting up, I think it's a question that exists today. It will still be true for our children. It's a question of how do we systemically address the impediments to getting women into positions, not only into jobs, but into positions of influence, where they're taking decisions and changing things. So that for me is the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I think to ask, does it exist? Yes, perhaps the statistics don't lie or cannot lie when they're reputable statistics, but they're global and they're somewhat relative. I think from a participation standpoint, there's clear inequality, and the numbers prove it. Even from entry point, there are issues. But when you talk about equality from an area of access to resources, pay equality, opportunities in the workplace, I find from my sphere of observation, emphasis on my sphere of observation, that it seems the numbers to be fast becoming overrated. I see a lot of change, and that is just, sort of sphere of influence. With regards to the journey, I've been very privileged. I think my journey was such that the previous places I have worked with fantastic employers, male employers, who actually, I think, even preferred working with men, with women, I beg your pardon. And if anything, there was almost a bias to us in terms of the opportunities granted. However, at the top, with real top executive space, we started to see a thin out of women participation. But in hindsight, and perhaps looking a little closer, I think a lot of those instances, there were obvious choices being made by the women, unconsciously or consciously. And of course, now I stand somewhat on the employer side. And what do I see? I still see a gap in terms of participation. So we have, we're interviewing for HR roles. We have a slew of CVs that are female CVs. We're interviewing for legal, we're interviewing for compliance and the likes, we have women. When we're interviewing for CFO, for risk, sometimes it's 0. So we find women still focusing in particular areas. And it's okay to choose, the areas you want to develop, but I think it begs the attention as to how we want to interpret the journey relative to the choices that we make. Because in this space, particularly in the finance space, from a trajectory succession point, you will see that usually it falls into certain lines, obviously from a skill set perspective. And so for women, we should analyze or assess what we want to do and determine what areas and what kind of companies would allow us to get to our vision. For example, the NSC, where you're seeing a place like Mrs. Awe being next in command. In a finance space, strictly finance space, that might be a challenge. And so we need to consider this perhaps as we make our choices and know how to play up our game to attain our goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for having me this morning. Let me state here from the onset, the Deputy British High Commissioner said it a few minutes ago. The Global Compact, we do not participate in events where you have all male panels. We don't. And I did make that clear, but my colleagues explained to me that this is a special day, and that's why we're having the all-male panel. So thank you very much indeed for bringing that out. We have signed the pledge. Now, in terms of do we have gender inequality, I just want to read the UN Secretary General's speech for today, part of it, for the International Women's Day. He said, we live in a male-dominated world with a male-dominated culture. In government, in the private sector, international organizations, including the UN. He said the central question for gender equality is power, and he continued. So we are here, and that's why we are here today, because there's gender inequality. And in terms of pressing for progress, I really don't want to wait till 2030 or 2017. We need to do it before then. And that's why we're not pressing. We're actually going to demand and fight for progress, for gender equality. Because it affects our economy, it affects each one of us. So we need to. And if men are saying 2017, let's say we won't agree. There is power in unity for us women. And let me also say, in terms of my own personal experience, I actually want to say from my own, when I started up, as a young student who just finished secondary school, and I was supposed to go to university. My father, very educated person. My mother, educated. My father thought, I should go to a secretarial school. It's a noble profession to be a secretary. Somebody's secretary. It's a very noble profession. When my mom stood up and said, you know what? She's going to the university. She must earn a degree. She must. And thank God today I'm a lawyer. Thanks to my mother. So I have experienced it also in my own home. And so gender inequality does exist. And that's why we are here today, to ensure that it doesn't continue. We need to fight for it. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy International Women's Day, and welcome to the exchange again. I believe that gender inequality exists, and I think it's an appropriate thing to have a conversation about it. I think one has to respect the statistics that one has at one's disposal, but at the same time, you should also be anecdotal. So in the sense that, has it occurred to you? And can you question those statistics? Can you question those numbers because of what you know and your own life experiences and the experiences that you're aware of in your sphere of influence, so to speak? So I'll talk a little bit, since Irene asked the question, did you experience when you were starting out? I don't think I have experienced gender inequality myself. However, as I have grown older, I have gone back to question certain things that happened to me at the beginning of my career. And in raising those questions, it is apparent to me that there were issues of unequal treatment. Some of them I didn't have sufficient agency myself to question and demand a different type of treatment. And I'm not necessarily sure that the individuals that were involved in creating those spaces necessarily thought that what they were doing was wrong, or that they were doing anything that was inappropriate. So I remember, for example, going to all-male meetings where I was the only woman starting out, and being diverted to things like ensuring that we had a conference room, we had coffee, we had whatever. Because I was brought up in Nigeria, albeit by a very feminist mother who insisted that on the wall in my room, instead of Michael Jackson or any of the other stars, there was a poster that said "Education first, marriage later." I still, because I was raised in Nigeria, did not question those experiences. It was just normal. All I was doing was trying to ensure that everyone was comfortable. But there were other men at my level in those places. So why weren't they the ones asked to go and get the coffee? Why weren't they the ones asked to check whether the room was ready? Why weren't they the ones asked other things around making us comfortable? After all, we were all people starting out. So I think sometimes you may think you've not experienced. At that time, I don't think it did anything wrong for my career. But now I'm much more conscious, and some of my team members know, I'm much more conscious about saying to women, question the jobs that are being given to you. Are those jobs also being given to your male colleagues? Or are you being sectioned into somewhere because you're a woman and you're better at certain things? Because sometimes our society views women in a very subordinate role. In Yoruba culture, which I am familiar with, you have different roles as a woman. So you can be an iyawo, you're a wife. You can be an iyawole, you're a wife in your husband's family. You can be a dalemosu, which means you've gone and you've come back into your father's house. All sorts of roles. And outside, you're a boss. Which one of those roles are you fulfilling at a particular time? You need to be very deliberate and have agency for yourself in order to ensure that you don't get sucked in to unequal treatment, subtly. I'll stop there because there's so much more to say.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Thank you to the team. Thank you to Oscar and Niem. I know the progress that the exchange has been making with regard to women advancement, because we held the exchange with its annual sustainability report, and we can see progress for sure. One of the reasons why I'm excited to be here, and I'm happy to answer this question, is because this is something that affects me personally, especially when it comes to gender and ageism. So for me, it's not just gender, it's age. So I walk into a building and you're looking at me and thinking, is this the person? Is this the CSR in action lady? So we have an annual conference. So yes, it does exist, to answer the question. So we have gender inequality in different spheres of our life. Economic, political. I mean, most of the political leaders we know are women leaders. So you acknowledge that there's a market woman leader who is driving something. And if you look at the primaries as well, as Mrs. Fashola mentioned, if you don't actually have women being chosen at the primaries level, how do you even have women to vote for in the first instance? So we're saying we want women advancement in politics, but you don't even get them out through the primaries. That process is in itself flawed. I would like to dwell on the social aspect though, because it's a huge challenge. I feel like if we do not address our culture, then we may not be able to address the institutional challenges that we have, because you don't even have the appropriate number of women filling the positions that you want filled. So you say, I want to have 50% representation, but the number of qualified women you don't even have. So I personally don't believe in tokenism or federal character or any of such. Because at the end of the day, you then start meting out inequality to the men, because you're fighting for women, and then the next instance is men who are pushing back and saying, oh, hey, why is a woman in that position when I'm more qualified than the woman? Personally, I haven't allowed for myself to be discriminated against. I have a reputation for pushing back, and and I'm unapologetic. So the thing is, to give a recent example, my last child is 5 years old, and then I found out that I was going to have a baby again. And my first instinct was to hide it. Why? Because from experience, I knew that whenever I walked into a room looking pregnant or being pregnant, they thought I wasn't able to be committed to what I needed to do. I remember once when I had a gig trying to get a business to buy into an idea that I had, and I was pregnant. Whenever I'm pregnant, I'm fine. There are women who have challenges. If you can't work while you're pregnant, it's a different thing. If you're pregnant and you can move around, why should you be stopped? So I went into this meeting and the man said to me, "You are pregnant. Why? You should be lying down and putting your feet up." I said, "Oh God, do I look unwell?" So if I'm not unwell, you know, why do I have to sit in the place? And I again, to go back to the social space, if women, to look at the gender pay gap, this affects social life, right? So if a woman is, and I'm not talking of equal pay, because for instance, you can have equal pay for men and women in the same position, but the problem is the women are in the lower paying roles. So yes, there's equal pay, but then we're at the bottom earning equally with the men. And so you do, so you have membership of clubs, for instance, and most of the members of those clubs are men. And the rules are made for men. And so because you have women, you have men making the rules, you don't actually make provision for women with children. And if women don't have the spending power, how do women participate? So gender inequality is very real. If the world's world power, as they say it is, and one of the most liberal countries in the world is still struggling to elect a female president, then my sisters, the struggle is real.
Thank you, members of the panel. So it's clear that gender inequality is real. And I'm happy that in the course of the discourse amongst the panelists, you have mentioned some of the practices that have promoted gender inequality. So, for example, we've heard that sometimes the type of jobs allocated to women within organizations is a form of promoting gender inequality. We've heard that sometimes, even in terms of how parents bring up children, or even how the society views children, that the kind of courses that women are directed or diverted towards taking is also a form of promoting gender inequality. We've heard about women being asked to step down in politics. It's also a form of gender inequality. Now we're trying, and the theme itself is press for progress. We've identified some of these things. But the question then is, looking at organizations and companies, are there, because the essence of this meeting is to identify some of these policies, these practices, and to cause about change. So can you identify in terms of organizations, in terms of workplaces, what types of structures, procedures, practices, attitudes, maybe from the top down, are organizations putting in place that are promoting gender inequality? So for this question, I would ask Mrs. Olowola to start.
Okay, thank you. So in the past, we had a lot of policies that obviously marginalized women. So in the past, in the civil service, I know that if a woman became pregnant and didn't have a husband, she wasn't allowed to go on maternity leave. So there was a time, there was a letter circulated on WhatsApp at some point where a woman director was saying or was responding to a woman who applied for leave, saying that she couldn't go on maternity leave because as far as she knew, she didn't have a husband. Her last name hadn't changed, so she could take a month of her annual leave to go on leave. But I know that I mean I asked, and I hear that has changed. So things are changing, but I think what hasn't changed is our culture. I think that's the biggest challenge now, because many organizations are more aware. They have human resources policies that support women. maternity and all of that. But our culture is the biggest challenge. Now you have a situation, and it's, as they would say, unwritten policies. So you have a situation where a woman is, a grade 15 director in the civil service. And I mean, I think from about 12, you are supposed to have an official car to drive you around. Now, men at that level get a car quickly as soon as they come on board, but they feel that the woman doesn't really need it. I mean, there's no rush. The men need to get first, and then and then the woman can get. And then there are issues around, in terms of the unwritten policies as well. I have a friend, for instance, who is a chief of staff. How many women chief of staff do we know? I don't know that there's any other one, right? So at some point she was chief of staff, and when she went for meetings, they would introduce her as his PA. They knew she was the chief of staff to the minister. But just to undermine her status, the men would say, his PA. And whenever she pushed back and wanted to advance certain things, they would be upset because she's a woman. She did not have a voice. Or for instance, once when we had a major conference, which my organization organizes, there was the issue of the hotel having allotted a particular space to more than one organizer. And then we were having a loud discussion, and all the men were shouting at the top of their voices. I mean, this was obviously in the northern part of the country. And the men were shouting and being upset and everything. And as soon as I raised my voice, one of the men said to me, Madam, you're a woman, oh, don't raise your voice. And I said, oh God, but I've been trying to talk. Nobody said, yes, but you're a woman, don't raise your voice. I didn't know what to say about that. So we have those kinds of challenges. And then, where's the other one? So there's also in domestic life, for instance, I had talked about gender pay gap. And you find that the jobs that have predominantly men working in them pay higher. So even if it's something like a domestic role like driving, so a driver definitely earns more than the nanny. And the nanny, I can tell you, works harder. It's not easy looking after children. So you work harder and longer and earn less. That is a major challenge. So these are some of the, unwritten rules. And then finally, there's this research that I happened upon recently. So, but it's a UK research, but I think it's still applicable. In the big four accounting firms, you would find that the gap in gender pay is about 18%. Now they're saying they're working on it to change this, but then in the financial and oil and gas sector, it's about 38 and 32% respectively in the UK. Now, what do you think ours would be like? So I had this shared in a group, and the moderator said, oh, I'm sure that this is not the case in Nigeria. We're lucky that this is not the case in Nigeria. And I said, really? How is that? You see, so I think the challenge is that we're not encouraged to push here. When you push, you're aggressive, and aggressive is a bad trait for a woman. So you should keep quiet and take it like that, because apparently you're not the breadwinner. So these are some of the things. So I think that these are unspoken policies that we can address as people, whether men or women, because we're aware that they exist. So even though we have guidance to avert any marginalization, we as a people are not allowing for those processes to work as they should.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wade, do you have some additional policies or practices?
Okay. I think that basically we live in a culture where the woman's role is seen as a subordinate role. And unfortunately, we import that culture, because we're products of that culture, into everything that we do. And so the way that we think and the way that we're conditioned is a product of that culture. And organizations, what they need to do is to realize, don't hide from it, like don't pretend that these issues are not in existence and that's not the cultural milieu in which we live, and be deliberate about what they do about it. Do it by way of policies. So do it by way of things like gender awareness training, gender bias training, so that people are aware that they carry some of these biases with them as they go. Or like I did in my first comment, you get an understanding that certain things that you had been doing, where you were doing because of the conditioning that you had, and you then take steps to ensure that you don't do them any longer. But that takes the organization itself deciding that it will retrain people, the organization deciding itself that there will be certain policies and procedures, and that people have to abide by those policies and procedures, and also that where there is a divergence from a policy and procedure, it is punished, and it is publicly punished, so that people know that that is not acceptable in that organization. So I think those are some of the things that an organization can do. Now, I think socially, all of us have a role to play. We are the women who bring up young men and young women. What are you teaching your sons in terms of the way that they treat women? Do you send your daughter into the kitchen and your son is playing football? Both of them should be in the kitchen. Why? Because eating is a natural thing. Cooking is a life skill. It's not because you don't need to know how to cook because you need to make gourmet dishes or whatever. You just need to know how to cook because you need to survive. And everybody needs to survive. It's not only females that need to survive. So that when you raise that man, he doesn't assume that his tired wife has to stop in the market to buy stuff and then come home. If she says she wants to do it, there's some of us that want to do that. And that is okay, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. I don't think that we should replace the oppressiveness of patriarchy with the oppressiveness of feminism. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you should be allowed to make choices. And we as women, as people that raise the primary caregivers for children, have a duty to try and change the way that we're raising our boys and our girls. Our boys and our girls. Sometimes we're raising our girls to serve. You need to raise everybody to serve, because it is a human skill to serve. So as the Deputy High Commissioner was saying, it will take a long time to make a change to these beliefs and these values. But we need to see it. We need to start pressing for progress now. And the fact that you don't see the change in your lifetime, the fact that you may not see the change because it's going to come in 50 years or 100 years or whatever, doesn't mean that you shouldn't start now. Be deliberate about what you're doing and have agency. Don't just allow life to happen to you. This is how they raise children in our family. No. You are the mother. You carried that child for 9 months. Raise the child deliberately.
Thank you, Mrs. Owe. Mrs. Makinwa, we know that there are some principles that have been put in place by organization in terms of what companies, countries should put in place to ensure that some of these gender inequality practices are eliminated. Can you share some of these with us so that people here can take it back to start implementing in their organizations?
Thank you. The Global Compact and the UN Women developed the Women's Empowerment Principles, which guides companies in terms of how they should empower women in the marketplace, in the workplace, and also in the community. There are 7 of them on issues of leadership, like Tone from the Top, for example, ensuring that you have policy in place. And let me actually give you an example of what happened in my organization recently. We just had a new Secretary General last year in 2017. As soon as he came in, he said, you know, there is gender inequality in the United Nations. And we are a global organization. We need to lead by example. He now sets gender parity, 50-50 within the top management of the United Nations. He said, I'm going to achieve this. And I can tell you, he started. So it's about taking action. My sister just said it. You just don't talk about it. The CEO, you need to take action. You need to have a work plan, and you need to set goals. It must be smart. Your action must be smart. And so he did it. He started, and within 1 year, about 3 weeks ago, we achieved for the first time in the United Nations 50-50 gender parity at the highest level. So we are showing an example. That's an example to companies and to government also in all spheres of life, whether it's in corporate, whether it's in government, whether even in civil society, that we need to ensure gender parity. So the issue of, so what I'm saying therefore is that it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional, and you need to back it up with your action. And that's what the principles are. There are 7 of them. I really don't want to go into them this afternoon, but you can just look at them on our website. It will guide you as a company if you are just starting. It will help you. What do you need to do in terms of zero tolerance to violence against women, in terms of communication, in terms of reporting? You need to report, because they always say what gets reported gets done. So what's happening? How many women do you have at the top management? How are you communicating that, cascading it, to the whole organization? And mind you, it's not only in the workplace only, even in the marketplace and also in the community wherever you are operating. There are 7 of them. Please check them out on our website. I also want to also say that there is also, with regards to the private sector, the role of investors is very important. I think it's BlackRock recently demanded from its, the companies, how many women do you have on your boards? So it's very important that investors start demanding from companies in terms of the gender inequality dimension of their companies. And actually ourselves as people who invest, I work a lot on issues of anti-corruption. And let me give an example of what happened a few years ago. We had a meeting with companies, the big multinationals, and some of our companies from here in Nigeria. And we were talking about corruption. And the companies, I asked them and said, you know what, yeah, we don't report on corruption. I said, why? They said, because investors don't ask us. I said, oh my God, investors don't ask you. So I now started working with the Principles for Responsible Investment. And the moment they started asking companies in terms of their anti-corruption practices, companies started reporting on that. What am I saying? You have your own, you are a shareholder. Start asking your companies, how many women do you have on your boards? You need to vote, with your money. If there are companies where there are not women on the top level, you need to vote. Run away from them, no matter how profitable they are. It is time that we women have to press for progress, and the power is in our hands. We can do it. We are 50% of the population in the world, and even here in Nigeria, we are so crucial. So the women's empowerment principles are there, not only for the corporate also. They can be used by by civil society organizations, and they can be used by government officials.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Makinwa. So the panelists have touched on a very important point, which is like an elephant in the room. Mrs. Makinwa talked about the fact that women, we need to press forward, we need to take things into our own hands. Ms. Awe talked about the fact that you sometimes have to reorientate yourself in terms of how you were brought up to act in a certain manner. and the fact that you have to ensure that when you get to the workplace and you're in the business environment or the political environment, you recognize that this arena is different, and so therefore I need to act in a certain manner. Now, there are some people who believe that the reason for, or at least one of the reasons for gender inequality is because of the attitude of women themselves. That some women, and I can hear that some people share that view. Now, they believe that women do not do, not that we do not have the ability to do it, but we choose not to do what it takes to move forward in the workplace. That we do not hustle like the men. We're not aggressive enough. Now, time will not permit us, because there was actually a video we wanted to show you, a video clip from CNN Money. But I'll tell you what the video clip showed. So the video clip was designed to show some of the reasons why there's actually pay disparity between men and women, and we've heard this mentioned a lot. And that clip showed that a man and a woman, they were asked to go before the boss to defend the reason why they needed a pay disparity, a pay increase. And they agreed that, okay, the industry is 3%, so we are going to go there and ask for more than 3%, but they didn't tell each other the percentage they were going to ask for. So the woman went to the boss and said, okay, you see, I want to ask for a pay increase of 6%. And okay, the reason is because, you see, I've been mentoring people, the people coming up behind me, I've been mentoring them, I've been ensuring that, that I'm building, people that will take over and all of those kind of things. And the man goes into the room and he says, you see, I'm asking for 10%. And the reason I'm asking for 10% is that, you see, I've been bringing in sponsorship. You know that, the income of the company has grown by 10%. 2% out of that comes from me. And in fact, if so he was actually giving statistics. And so the video showed that so at the end of the day, they did get it, but the woman got like 5%, the man got like 6%. So it's the attitude. You can see the difference in the justification. So I want to put this question first to Mrs. Olubi. Are we women ourselves doing enough to ensure or reduce gender inequality? I mean, Mrs. Oluwa said something that I refuse to accept it when people try and bring me down. Are we as women doing what we need to do? Are we hustling? Are we setting aggressive goals? Are we actually building our careers? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think, and I've seen that video, and I think that, and this is my opinion, that there's a lot of truth and a lot of mistruth to this perspective. I feel innately that the African woman is a strong, assertive woman. And history is replete with examples of who we are fundamentally. And I choose to play down on these assertions that we hear all the time, because I feel that it gives us unconsciously this victim mentality. In my career, and now on this side as an employer, I have met many men who are bold, good negotiators. I've also met many men who are timid, socially awkward, poor negotiation skills. I've met women who are bold, who are socially, whatever we've qualified to be this template. And I've met women who have struggled. I do not know that it is more skewed in honesty against women. And I think the more we begin to play to this narrative, we would unconsciously begin to think that we are a certain way. Now, there is a truth. And the truth is that we are, by our disposition, by the fact that we are women, faced with certain challenges. Because we have home funds to manage, we have issues, we cannot take some risks that men will take. And this is fact. But there is a balance, and I find, and what I usually would counsel would be that we should aim for competence in whatever sphere that we're in. And that competence, you can't hide it. And you look for balance, such that in the times when you can give, you give as much as you can, so that when there are excuses or issues, it's easier for people to understand because they know that they have seen you in your best element. And it's also important for us to choose and determine. Nobody starts a venture without counting the cost. So we as women also should determine the areas we want to play in and ask ourselves deep questions as to whether we can afford to or not. And it's as simple as that. I have one of my closest friends in the public sector. Just a few days ago, I sent her a text in the afternoon at 11:30. I'm just getting from a meeting. Can you talk now? You and who are talking? At 11:30. I was already, close to the boarding gate of sleep. She has made a decision. She knew what she was getting into, and her work is very rigorous. And she has given everything, made the sacrifices. I, on the other hand, know, because of my priorities, where I want to play and where I cannot play. I have passed up an opportunity because I know that I cannot give in what this X and X opportunity requires. And I've decided that where I want to find growth, I would pursue because that has ability. But essentially, my mindset is that we're more than enough. Women innately we're strong, we're bold, we're assertive, and a lot of the challenge might be that we haven't been exposed enough in leadership to practice these innate gifts and skills that we have. And there are no templates really to who that kind of person is. And we all should learn as human beings, not just women, and that's the way that I like to see it, essentially. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our time is basically up, but I must ask Mrs. Kunene to give us, we've learned a lot from this panel. We've learned about the principles that organizations need to, put in place. And I believe that, we will try and ensure that we circulate that, because as many people as know about those principles as possible will ensure that we make progress. But in terms of action points, what do you propose? Because we've also heard about the fact that we as individuals, whether it's male, whether it's female, we have our roles to play. So stepping forward now, pressing for progress, what action points do you suggest that we take away from this place today in terms of looking back 1 year from now, we would have moved and shifted, this gender inequality?
Thank you for asking me a question on action. First thing in a world of work, evidence. Nothing works like evidence. Gather your information, collate it, present it in a way that is not deemed to be subjective. It's actually not about you as an individual. It's about the organization. It's about the system. It's about the legacy, what you are going to leave behind. Because in as much as you are fighting for yourself in one role, the important thing is that not you winning. It's about all women winning. So gather the evidence, present it in a way that is irrefutable. Next, once you have the evidence, assess what will work in your situation, what will not work. If I can make an example of banking, if you look at banking statistics, one area where banks do really well is employment of women. But then it's who, where, do they take decisions? You can't tell me that banks are doing well when we are talking about retail. Ask me, at corporate level, at investment level, do you have women? So that statistic which says that banking is doing well, you interrogate it with the facts. After you've done your assessment, it's important to have an action plan. You cannot just assess for the fact of assessing. Your action plan is get stronger if you can compare it. So have comparators, whether it's other companies or it's industry-wide. Make sure that you create a baseline and you assess according to what is available out there. What I've seen over time is that there isn't an industry which doesn't want to win. Everyone wants to be known that their hustle factor is the one that's winning. And if you can present that, you know what, we are doing badly in this space, there will be action. And part of the action when we are assessing is the alignment as you go along. You are not going to get it right the first time. So build it in your plan how to make those alignments as you are going along. And importantly, when it comes to talent management, we tend to have organizations which have a missing middle. So we speak about people getting in, so we are keen to get young women to get into the business. We are keen to get women to get at board level, at management level. But where is the pipeline of women as junior managers in whatever position that you have? Even those positions where it is deemed difficult to find women, you should be saying, fine, let us build a pipeline. Because you cannot create a system-wide solution if it is not anchored in the ability for people to compete. You can't create a job for a person. It's about other women being able to enter that space and creating a sustainable path for achievement. Women against men, men against women, but it's more about your organization winning. Because if it affects the bottom line, it gets to be done. And this is true even in government. There was a question earlier, how many chief of staffs? I can confess that in my previous life, I was a chief of staff for a deputy president. And in those situations, you get into a room, ministers, men and women, you are a chief of staff for a deputy president. There's a lot of excitement at first, but then when you look at the role, what does it give you? If it doesn't give you space to contribute to policies, if it doesn't give you space to effect changes, then maybe you'd be better off as a secretary. Because you can't have it and not be able. And it's just the maxim of power. Once you have it, you should be able to exercise it. It's not there just as a crutch. Exercise it for the benefit of more women participation. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to encourage all the companies here to kindly go and sign the women's empowerment principles. As soon as you leave here, it will really help you. And finally, I want to mention in terms of what the Secretary General said this morning. He said, power is never given, it is taken. That's what the UN Secretary General says. So for us to press for progress, we need to take power from the men. Thank you.
Thank you. Please give a round of applause to the members of the panel. I believe you agree with me that they have done a very fantastic job. So, do we have any questions for any member of the panel? So, the members of the panel are, okay, we have some hands. Okay.
My name is Olutime Adigbe, and I'm a writer and feminist activist. When you made the remark about women raising their sons differently, there was a lot of agreement in the room. And I just wanted to ask, is that the most expansive view of that solution? Because unless you're an unmarried mother like me, most women are raising their children in domestic situations within a culture that, one, believes that, has a very narrow view of masculinity, and two, believes that women should or must defer to their husbands at home. So if we're saying, well, women should raise their sons differently, are women raising their sons in contexts in which their husbands, for instance, would be okay with their sons being steered in a direction of more expansive masculinity? Are we assuming that women have more power within their domestic setup than they actually do? Does the culture, does the society support women in teaching their sons to be better versions of human beings than the society prescribes? Because my mother was very feminist. She raised all of us, me, my sister, and my brother, in a particular way. And my brother went out into the world, and because the society gave him the social space to be a certain type of man, and that type of man was a man with power who could assert things like, well, when my wife comes home from work, then she cooks for me, regardless of how he was raised. He went out and became the type of man who says to his wife, I'm hungry. So is it enough to say, women, raise your sons differently, or should we still be thinking about the broader social systems that make these types of ideas pervasive and possible?
Thank you.
Dr. Olajumoke Akiode, Executive Director of Center for Ethics and Sustainable Development. I want to congratulate NSE for this program. I was here last year, and what I took away from this panel was that gender inequality was much more in our minds than in the reality. But I'm glad this morning that you're really coming out to say, yes, it's out there, and you're pointing us to solutions, more or less. I just want to add or say that our culture, she decided to say something about culture. It's something that we all need to put our hands together to change, because cultures evolve. She just said something about it's just important that we go back home. We should begin to pass those cultural values, norms, through the crucible of rationality. And if it doesn't stand, we should do away with it. We are in this 21st century. You cannot no longer at this time be saying that a woman cannot inherit property, because property is important to participate in the economic space. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ibiyemi Fashino. My question is for Mrs. Olawola. In your remarks, you mentioned pushing back when people try to put you down as a woman. Now, how do you marry that with being a team player? You don't want to be that person who can't pitch in where it is needed. So even when you're being steered towards roles that you think, no, I shouldn't be doing this, you don't ask me to do this because I'm a woman. But at the same time, you also want the job to get done. You want things to move, and you want to be a team player. So how do you put these two together?
Just to ask a question from Ms. Awe, it has to do with culture, really. I really don't know what we can do to make culture a positive thing. I mean, going by what a lot of people have said here, for women to succeed, I think it starts from the home. It starts from the kind of man you're married to. And if you don't have a supportive partner, it will be very hard for you to really strive for excellence in your workplace. And for you to even have a good man, what kind of training did you have? Are you the kind of a lady that was raised to believe that you have to be married at all costs? And I think society has a lot to do with that. They put too much pressure on women to marry. We are raising women to be a better version of themselves, but they are not raising the men to even be good husbands. You are raising women to be good wives, but you are not raising commensurate good husbands. And this, I mean, the good women will go out there. They want to marry, and then the only men that you have are the bad ones who are not raised well. No, honestly, we need to do a lot. We need to do a lot. Honestly, if we do not address those issues, we are still going to come here in another 10 years and still be talking about the same thing. It needs to start from the homes. What kind of men and women are we raising? Who are the men that we are releasing into the society? And these are the same men that will be CEOs of companies with those kind of mindset. What kind of policies do you think they will put in place? It will never favor women. It will never. So to me, I think we need to look for ways to change the culture to favor women in positive ways. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have a reaction to what the panelists and keynote speaker has talked about concerning culture. And I'm reacting to pressing for progress. I want to talk about 3 areas that I find annoying that we women have even accepted. One, in the area of driving. When you're pressing for progress, it's not only for equality on board positions and at corporate places. There are cultures that we've accepted. For instance, in this society, we believe that women are not good drivers. Even when my husband is driving me, you see traffic in front, before you say, now women, now woman. We've accepted this. So if we're pressing for progress, we can correct these things. I think I'm a better driver than my husband. Because women, we are when we do things, we think before we do things and the aftermath of it. There's another misconception or another innuendo that we've accepted. Women, we've accepted amongst ourselves, even when you get a job, is your boss a female? Wahala day. And it's not the case. So when we are pressing for progress, in a societal progress, we should try to correct these things. In the past 2.5 years, I've had a female boss, and it's been fantastic. I've been mentored the right way. Even 2 of my bosses, direct and indirect, they are on the panel now. And I don't think they are bad bosses. But women, we've accepted that, when you have a nice hairdo, your madam will get angry with you. People have told me this, and it's a lie. And my madam called, I like your jacket. It's not, we shouldn't just accept what the society has thrown at women. If we do this, we can press for progress. Another area is... this will be the last area, please. Okay. Reasoning. I was attending a church meeting one day, and one pastor was answering a question, and that a man said, the wife was this and that, and the man said, does your wife have a weave on fixed? He said, yes. How can you be arguing with a woman that has not put water in her hair for 3 months? So sometimes they believe that our reasoning is so poor, and we've accepted it. Why do you reason with women? How are you arguing with a woman? And these are societal innuendos that we should correct in one way or the other. That's what
I agree totally with all these panelists. But I want to look at it from another way. Mrs. Olubi, right? Oh, okay. Has talked so much from the perspective of an urban women. Because if we go into the our rural roots, we will see that there is a lot of gender equality. And I don't want to talk so much about it because I know we have taken a lot of our time. But I also want to comment on what Ms. Awe has said. Really, Ms. Awe has really touched the real problem, and that is the cultural attitude of everybody, particularly even the women. But I only want to suggest in this area, I want to suggest the policy of the government. And I know that Lagos State is doing a lot in that area. For instance, we have not been looking at the schools. The teachers have a lot of influence over our children. Sometimes we will hear our children say, my auntie said this, my uncle said this. Now, if we go into that sector and change the attitude of the teachers and the curriculum, the way and manner both girl child and boy child are being raised, I'm sure we're going to impact a lot. We have grown, we have been, maybe survivor of victim of this inequality, but we can start, and nurturing the young ones, for the change. That's my own contribution. Thank you.
Let me wish all the women happy National Women's Day. International Women's Day. Okay, I'm not standing up to respond on behalf of men. I want to commend the panelists for the very thoughtful conversation we have had today, and also the very good recommendations that are coming out. But the question is, who are we making these recommendations to? Very critical. The bigger picture I'm looking at today is the issue of skills and competencies, women mobilization and mentorship. How do we ensure that this conversation does not remain an event? How can women themselves, become more systematic, in addressing these challenges? So, and I think this is very useful. Thank you all, and again, happy celebration.
I think that was a successful session, if you ask me. Please, let's give all our panelists and, of course, our moderator a round of applause. I think we at the NSC have been called out, and hopefully next year we can make a change. Hello, I have an observation that as we are pressing for progress, I would appreciate that next year we have male ushers. There is no harm. There is no norm that stays that ushers must only be ladies. I like that one, I have to say. And we have taken note, I have to say. Yeah. We know what we're talking about. We know where we're going. And there's one more, sorry. Can any of the panelists confirm to us how many qualified women have been able to project positively in the workplace when there is an opportunity, especially when they are equally qualified like the men? I'm not sure the angle, but I'm thinking maybe some statistics, some kind of breakdown, or an idea of how many women are actually stepping forward, if any at all.
Okay, so Ms. Awe, you have two questions. I believe you noted it down. Mrs. Olowola, you have one question. I believe you noted it down. Then for this particular question on statistics, maybe Mrs. Kunene and Mrs. Makinwa, who have some statistics, can answer this last question. Thank you.
All right. I actually recall one question and a comment, because I don't think Mr. Akiode's own was a question. So I totally agree with you that the example that I gave is not a fulsome example. It's in the context of this panel that I gave that specific example about women raising men differently and raising women as well differently, because we're mothers and we have access to children. We can mold things that we want out of them as they grow until they get to their teenage years, and then they start resisting some of those things. But I think that it's a society that has to raise the child. However, what I'm suggesting is that society is made up of you and me, and that so you should start in your own house. Many of us, because we realize that the problem is societal, are then giving up. We're giving up even in our families. We're not even prepared to talk in our families, talk less of in the larger society. And so the situation continues to exacerbate and multiply itself and exist. And that's why you would have a very feminist mother, like my mom or your mom, raising sons who are like, who are you? When you were growing up, you weren't like this. You weren't raised like this. So I think what it is let's start in our own spaces. Let's start in spaces where we have influences. Some of us are mothers that stay at home, but we stay at home, but we have deep influences in the community because we're well educated and we choose to devote some time to family or to other things where we're outside of a formal work arrangement like I have. But because of that education, because of the influence that you have and the knowledge that you have, you can impact in the schools. You can impact in your community in a way that Tinu can only impact in her office. So let's start spreading that impact in other places. When you go and you visit your friend and you see what she's doing, she's saying to her daughter, you're just a girl, go and play with your dolls. When the daughter decides, instead I want to do a science, play with a science kit. Why are you doing that? Go and play with a doll. Why are you channeling that girl to that area? There's nothing wrong with playing with a doll, but why are you channeling that? It's because there's something in your mind that you're thinking. So what I'm saying in a nutshell, so I can wrap up, is it takes a village, but a village starts with a person.
Mr. I think the next question came from the lady. She was talking about the cultural problems and the fact that, yes, you can raise your child, but you are married to a man who thinks so. Her cultural issue, how do you deal with this cultural problem?
I'm really happy that you asked me that question. I'm really happy that you asked me that question, even though I do apologize that I forgot. Because I think that, one, I agree with you that marriage is overrated. My name is actually Ms. Awe, but people assume that I'm Mrs. Awe, and I don't do a very good job of correcting them. So I'm a Ms. But you just assume that because I am this age, I am a Mrs. So our society by the way, I'm married, but I didn't change my name. So our society places a lot of premium on being married. Because it places so much premium on being married and doesn't equip women to make right choices about the men that they marry, sometimes we're marrying the wrong men. I agree with you. I think as a young woman, and I was lucky enough to marry later in life, and so I think some of the mistakes I might have made if I had married younger, I don't think that I made, touch wood, with the person that I married. But what I'm saying is things like, what do you want out of your life? If you want to become the CEO of a bank, something tells me that you can't be married to a man that has a problem with you going on cross-posting. Something tells me you can be married to a man who has a problem with you coming home regularly at 11 p.m. Something tells me you can't be married to a man that says that your maternity leave cannot be spent like I did, partly working and partly looking after the baby. If you're going to have those kinds of existential arguments with your spouse, who should be your chief critic, your greatest cheerleader, your lover, your friend, then come into the office and also have the issues that you have to deal with, all the office politics and everything, then your life is full of strife. There is no need, so you need to make those types of choices about the man that you are marrying. I don't understand it. So you just need, my mother says, walk into love, don't fall into it. It's not a blind thing. Yeah, walk into love, don't fall into it. Be deliberate about it. Have your eyes wide open about it. So I agree with that. And I think as women, we also need to stop putting pressure on younger people. Stop putting pressure on them. Not everybody has to get married. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with marriage, but not everybody has to get married. Not everybody, some people can impact society greater, actually, if they are married. Look at Mother Teresa. Look at Oprah Winfrey. These are examples of people that didn't get married, but have made tremendous impact on the lives of other people. So I'm not saying that if you have a personal desire for marriage, like I did, you should not get married. But I'm saying that we need to stop focusing on marriage and stop putting pressure on young women in particular, such that they then go and make wrong choices that affect their careers, that affect their ability to impact on society, or impact on the economy, or impact in other areas or spheres of influence.
As a younger person, I always looked forward to having children. Why? I wanted to have boy children. I wanted to have boy children because I was looking forward to showing them how to be raised. Because I had a very educated mom who just thought that, she was very caring. She looked after her children very well. She was very selfless. But obviously, different rules applied to the boys and the girls. So, there were no curfews for boys. There were curfews for girls. So you're a woman, you should do X, Y, Z and all of that. So when I had a son, eventually, so I have 3 girls, by the way, the 3 girls know that they can be president any day that they want, as long as they put their minds to it. And I didn't notice, but eventually I did have a boy, and everybody says, oh, he'll be spoiled. He will be this, he'll be that. And one day my brother came in and heard that, and he laughed, and he said, if only they knew.
Sorry, Mrs. Olua, just to
my
confirm.
question. Yeah.
Yes, your question. Okay, just confirm that you have the question. Pushing back.
So to my question, you said,
Yes.
how do you marry pushing back with being a team player? So any employer that I've worked with can attest to the fact that I'm a very hard worker. I don't make the excuses that of maybe the fact that I'm a woman, it's late, my mom expects me home, I don't know, all sorts of excuses. So, it's that time of the month. I've never given those excuses. I have been very committed to my job, any job that I've had. And even now that I have a business, I have a 2-month-old, and I'm here. And I've been all over the place. I haven't stopped working because I can. Now, if I can do all these things, why should anybody think that I shouldn't have a voice when I have something to say? Why should anybody be worried about me pushing back when I think something isn't right? If a man in that situation would push back, then why shouldn't I? Why is it different? Why do I have to worry about people's perceptions of me? Why? I'm a person. There's no woman is exactly the same as the next woman. Same as somebody had said, no man is the same as the next man. So I have my own personality, and I will do, as long as I know that something is right, I will do it. I really cannot be shaken by what somebody else says. And then to end this, I think that I want to say that any woman who thinks that being at the top alone would be a pleasant experience is in for a shocker. Because it is the nature of any type of species. You want to protect your own. So if you're the only woman at the top with all men in that same position, then you're going to see it. You will really deal with it. And then, so what I want to say in essence is, for all women who are here, because I think that, I've mentioned that the big challenge that we have is cultural, and that's why we should have that question of pushing back. I want to say that anybody who tells you that you cannot be president or executive director or chief of staff or whatever, anybody at all, no matter who they are, who tells you that you cannot be who you think you can be, should be banished from your life forever.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you very much, panelists. Time is up, so we won't be able to answer the last question, unfortunately. But I'm sure that if you share those statistics with us, we can share it and circulate it to those that are here. Thank you very much once again.
Yes, a warm round of applause for our first panelist and the moderator, Irene Robinson Anyowale. Thank you so much.
My name is Atilola Morunfolu. I'm a spoken word artist amongst so many other things. And when I got the call 2 weeks ago that I was going to be performing again this year, I was so happy, but I did not have another piece that was suited for this event. So I went back, I prayed, I did a little research, and I'm glad that I came up with what I came up. I just basically developed a piece that I've been working on before for a while now, and it's titled The F Word. All right, the vulgar word, the F word. This piece is not a battle of the sexes. Neither is it telling you to turn your lovers into exes. But if you will take your time and ponder on what this text is saying, you will realize that we might have misunderstood what really our vex is. Let me tell you about the F word. Vulgar to the minds and ears of many men and many men that they have. Forbidding this word because they fear their wives are being corrupted by the new media. It's feared by young men who feel women are running and taking over. Favored by women who feel oppressed but are too moused up in a tiny hole as a result of a locked up mouth. Fanned by young girls who feel oppression is their lot if they don't stem the tide now. Fought against by politicians who would rather rot in their graves than shift their butts to create space for the women in leadership. F is for female, F is for feminine, but F is for feminism. The most searched word in the world in the year 2017. The most Googled word by the oppressed, yet the most controversial word of all time that it broke every record to become the Merriam-Webster word of the year last year. A word rising from the West, speaking for every Miriam locked up in the North and every Miriam shut down in the Middle East by men who fear they're about to go down south. But the controversy of this word continues to rise and rise and rise faster than the effects of bread laden with yeast. A word so powerful that it has turned fathers against daughters, lovers against lovers. What was meant to bring us together has now turned us against each other. They say we should fight for women's rights as society has stepped on us. And if they don't listen, we'll pike up our placards. Feminism has now become a play card with which both genders oppress each other. The women say we don't need the men. We can do it on our own. The men say we need the women. We can use them for our own plaything, preything, sidekicks, side chicks to scratch the itch of our big little things. So fast forward to the year 3018, where mothers will sit their worlds down and tell them fairy tales by moonlight of once upon a time, there were the oppressors and the oppressed. And along the line, the oppressed became empowered. The empowered began to rise. And with the rising of the empowered, the oppressors felt oppressed. That is the end of my story. Because with the rising of female seminars here and women empowerment there, we have continued to shock the ego of the women, that we have begun to develop muscles to lift the dumbbells and the barbells for the men. But the real question is, who is empowering the men? They were supposed to grow from boys to men, but with the failure of mothers who have frozen their boys and overcooked their girls, we have created a dish of conjugal unions too rocky to grind with our molars, yet too mushy to savour with our palates, when all we really asked for was a sweet, tender steak of happily forever afters. We have raised a generation of men with arrested development, stunted in their growth, too lazy to lift a pinky finger in comparison with the women who are doing sit-ups and push-ups in the gym of marital preparation. Sorry, please don't clap. And then the mother said, submit, he is the Lord. The daughter said, I won't, he has been spoiled. He is not working for what he's worth. Every day I go to work, slaving away till my fingers hurt. He stays at home playing his ball, using my couch to grease his butt, and you tell me to accept that it's my lot? I'm sorry, Mama, I know in your time you submitted, but if it was worth it, why do you look so disheveled? So, with the failure of one side, the controversy around the F word began to rise, such that it has been misused, misunderstood, abused, that is so disfigured that it looks no longer like what it is. But what was it meant to be? What does feminism really mean? The dictionary says feminism is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. Equality of the sexes, not battle of the sexes. Because for long ago, we have been battling for rights that have already been ours, but traded by mothers who decided to raise stunted men, and now women are battling in marriages. And now we are faced with a face-off with slaps across faces, men battling wives, wives battling mistresses, senators verbally raping their female colleagues. This F word is so vulgar that it's forbidden to be uttered on the sanctimonious altar of matrimony. But for the F word to become a holy word, we must find a balance where both genders come to respect the fact that I am first human before I am woman. That if I have a brain and use it for your gain, and if he has a brain and uses it for your gain, then it's only saying that we get paid the same wage if we have invested the same pain. And if this basic equation, which is such a simple thing, does not sink in, we will continue to recycle a generation of simple things, and the woman will continue to scream, "Whoa, man." We must come to respect the fact that mothers need to stop raising their sons as superior, while the daughters are only used as a plaything in the kitchen and in front of the mirror. We must find a neutral point where we can all work together, because no gender can ever do without the other. Until we find this middle ground, we cannot really press for progress, because the only thing we will have is disparities where both parties bounce up and down the seesaw of a power tussle, because this pair has no parity. So what do we really want? Women need to come together, because right now, from the corporate world to the home front, a woman's biggest problem is another woman. We are the one taking other women's husbands. We are the one being horrible bosses, the horrible in-laws, the widow oppressors. So don't tell me the problem is the man, because without the cooperation of another woman, no man can get us down. That's how powerful we are if we really come together to press for progress. So yes, I'm sorry to say, this peace is not a battle of the sexes. Neither is it here to tell you to turn your lovers into exes. But if you will take your time and ponder on what this text is saying, you will realize that we might have misunderstood what really our vex is. Thank you.
We have to move swiftly along, and of course, there is on, I don't know if you have, everybody should have this program with you. It says we need to move along to testimonials from NSE GEM, that's NSE GEM, Gender Equality Men. And Tolulokpe, got it, Bajemu is coming to the stage to give the testimonials.
All protocols duly observed. My name is Tolulope Obajemu. I work in the broker-dealer regulation of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I joined the exchange in the year 2014 as a pioneer member of the Nigerian Stock Exchange graduate trainee program. So in 2014, when the parents for mentorship came out, I was paired with Oluwole Famakinwa in the Human Resources Department. My initial reaction was, why Wole? Because I felt we had nothing or almost nothing in common. But as we went along, I realized that we actually did have a lot in common, just that we went about achieving our goals in different ways. So I would briefly highlight the most important points, 2 points, to save time. So the first thing is, when we started our mentorship relationship, I had my weaknesses. As a female, I tended to put my emotions ahead of my work, or in some cases, try to mix both together. But what it made me see that to actually make progress and to develop as a person, I had to effectively separate my emotions from my work to make me move forward and develop and actually achieve my goals. I would give an example. I would probably have an argument with someone or have a disagreement with someone, and I would feel I would not want to say exactly what was on my mind because I had a perception of how I wanted to be seen. I wanted people to see me in a certain way, and because of that, I didn't want to get my feelings hurt or put my emotions on the line because I just didn't want I don't want to get my feelings hurt. But it let me see that I had to speak up for myself. I had to say what was on my mind at every point in time. If I felt that I was being oppressed, not really oppressed, but if I felt like someone was standing on me or oppressing me in any way, I had to speak up and let the person know I wasn't comfortable with it. It also let me know that in terms of in the workplace, I can't let my emotions come forth. I can't let my emotions take the first place because that would just hinder me in many areas. And because of that, for the past 3 years now, or almost 4 years now, I've actually developed as a person. My emotions now do not even come first. Fine, I do not want to get my feelings hurt, but I know how to effectively separate both things and make sure that I actually achieve my goals. And these are actually affected my work, and I actually do better at my work. I make more progress and I get more things done. Secondly is competitiveness. I am a bit of a competitive person, but also coming from the emotional aspect, I did not want to be seen in a certain light. I did not want to be seen as being too forceful. So I would hold myself back from doing some things or engage in some things. But what they told me that, see, Tolu, you can't keep doing like this. You can't keep being like this. You really need to put yourself out there. You need to put yourself forward. You need to be a lot more open-minded to see things in different ways. He told me that I had to develop myself, and even if I didn't want to speak verbally, by developing myself, my actions would speak well for me, and then it would translate in my work, and I would be at the forefront. I would be a lot more competitive because when two people are put up together to do something or given a chance, I would come to the forefront because I have the skills, I have the qualities, and I have delivered other times. Also, he told me that to be competitive, I really needed to put myself in a place where when tasks come up, for example, I don't shy away from them because I feel that's not my day-to-day role, or I feel that this is a weak point, I can't really do this. If a task should come up, if I'm assigned a task, I should put myself there and I should say, yes, I can do it. While I might not be able to do it at that point in time, I will go back and learn. Or if I can't find the resources somewhere, I would go to someone who I think can do it and speak to the person, let the person put me through and deliver. Fine, at that instance, I might not, the first draft of the work might not be so good. Then I would go back to the person that's done it before. And the person will put me through and tell me, you could do X, you could do Y to develop a better result. And so far, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I think my work has spoken for itself. I've actually excelled at different things not related to my core duties. I realized that my core duties here at the exchange is in regulation, so I'm tasked with regulating our broker dealers. But I also do other things that have nothing to do with my regulation. I have to do some things that are quite strategic and think and actually use my brain a lot to come up with solutions for certain things. So this has really helped me improve myself. My work has really improved. I have grown as a person. I am a lot more open-minded. I am a lot more assertive. And I think because there was that male influence as well. Wale is not the kind of person that would tell me, oh, don't do this, you're a lady, don't do this, or focus. If you do this, it's going to affect your relationship with men, or if you do this, no one's going to marry you, you're going to be seen as XYZ. So because of this, I have grown as a person. I've learned to put myself first in all instances and using that to achieve my goals as effectively as I can. In the course of the mentorship as well, I've realized that mentorship is not really a one-way street. So it's about giving, it's about taking and giving back. When I was told I was going to give a talk on the NSCGM, I spoke with Wale. I told him that I want to be able to give feedback on how this relationship has benefited you. And he told me when you joined the exchange, you were really young. You were this sharp person. You knew what you wanted, and then you're a millennial in all sense of it. And in being in the human resource department, and the exchange was bringing in more millennials, so to say, you really needed to be able to get into the mind of millennials and understand their way of thinking. And so because of that relationship, I was able to understand to an extent my way of thinking and use that in his job. And it has really helped him be more productive and come up with solutions that would better grow the organization. So in the long run, it has been a very mutually beneficial relationship, and we've both grown, and we know we will continue to grow in all areas, our careers, our personal lives, and all that. Thank you.
And I do believe it's about time for us to move on to the panel session. And the same way they said the red coats are coming, the men are here. It's time for us to acknowledge those amazing men in the building. Please, okay, this is something my husband always does. If you're a man in the house, please say "Awu." Ah, come on, you can do better than that. If you're a man in the house, please say "Awu." All right, so they are here. They're here. And we do appreciate you for braving it. There are a lot of brave men sitting in a room full of women who are ready to talk, and they're not going to be put down by anyone. I would like to welcome the moderator for the session. I hope I get this pronunciation right. Adratu Fatu, right? Ndiaye. Did I get that right? I did. Okay, please give me a round of applause for doing that. And I would like to welcome you. She is the United Nations Women's Deputy Representative. Please, let's give her a round of applause. So the theme for this panel is "The Future is Female, a Fad or a Fact?" Panel discussants are Mr. Bola Adeko, Head Shared Services, NSE. Mr. Dan Agbo, Partner, Udo Udoma and Bello Osage. And of course, someone we just welcomed earlier, comedian, MC, radio show, TV show host, motivational speaker, and so much more, Mr. Ali Baba Akobome. I would like to encourage you, if you have questions during the panel, please write them down and hand them to the ushers. Let's get all the questions to the front as quickly as possible so we can run over that segment of the event quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can just call me Aji. I'm very okay with that. Ask you to call the name of the panelists, because since I'm not Nigerian, I didn't want to find myself in a way that I will make mistake pronouncing the people's name. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to stand on the existing protocol. I just want to state the fact that UN Women has been in partnership with the Stock Exchange for these last 4 years for this event. And for us, it's a very important partnership because really we are trying to make a breakthrough in our partnership with the private sector, which is key now for the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal. I just want to highlight some things that I heard from the first panel. It is not about our individual success. It is about the success of all women. And that's why we are so shocked by the statistics. The statistics are not about middle class, highly educated women of Africa. The statistic is about also rural women, and that's why our progress has not been made. So in our strategies and approach, it's important that we factor that in so that, we can also move forward. That's why also one of the motto of the Sustainable Development Goal is reaching those are the farthest away, because these are the statistics that are pulling down, the numbers when it comes to promoting gender equality. So I think this question of the future is woman is a fact or fact is a very important question, because we tend to forget it. Women have been brought out to public life because of poverty. Before the mid-70s, nobody was talking about women's rights, because it is because of the impact of the adjustment, structural adjustment, that women had to come out on work. So nobody was prepared for that. And that's why, and also, progress also have been made. Sorry, because, International Women's Day, it's a day also where the UN also needs to emphasize some of the critical progress that have been made. Progress have been made, but we also tend to underestimate the power of patriarchy, because patriarchy has been on for more than, let's say, 10 centuries. So it's not because women are just coming out now that we will go to the root, because most of the people are accusing women for what is happening, including ourselves. So it will take a lot of transformation, and I think with our panel we'll get there, talk about the root causes, why things are not changing. So the first question I'm going to put to our panelists is, about the title of this panel. Is it a fact or a fad? Please, Mr. You have the floor.
I'm a coward, so I'll let somebody else speak first. Alibaba.
Thank you for having me. I'm just going to say the things my wife has told me to come here and say. So one, are there Catholics here? If you're a Catholic, can I see your hand up? Catholics. Every Catholic will let you know that if it were not for the women, there would be no Jesus. Okay? So, and Jesus is the future of everyone here. But seriously, the future is not a fad. When you put women in it, it's a fact. Women actually bring forth whoever becomes the future. And apart from that, they also nurture this future to become people in the future that you're talking about. The biggest problem has been that the plans of the woman have been derailed along the line, either by the society or by the men or by some other women. When it comes to building a future, you first have to educate the child in values, in personal development, in tolerance, and in religious beliefs. What we have all come to agree is that women always set this role for us. Your parents will tell you what is good and what is bad. But going to school, you begin to find people who adulterate what you have been taught. the and it's not just about peer pressure. Sometimes there's something inside the young man or a child that believes maybe what my dad told me or my mom told me it's not true, so let me find out if there's another truth out there. But sometimes it takes a stronger instilling of wisdom or proper teaching by the mothers for some of these children to pull through. Some months back, my daughter got back home and she had some friends over. But it was a weekday and they were on midterm. And the girl said, "Can you put the TV on?" And my daughter said, "My mom said no TV during the weekday." He said, "But we're on midterm." He said, "It doesn't change the weekday." And she was like, "My mom will let me." He said, "Well, this is not your mom's house." And the girl came to me and said, "We want to watch TV." And I, taking it that it was a midterm, I said, "Of course." And she went back and the TV was on. And my wife walks in and says, "Who turned the TV on?" And the visiting girl said, "It was Valerie's daddy that told us to turn the TV on." And my wife walks into the room and says, "Why did you let them turn the TV on?" I said, "It's weekday." She said, "No, it's midterm." And she said, "It doesn't change it. They still can wait and do reading and other things till it is 4 p.m. and they'll turn the TV on." I said, "Oh," so I walked back and said, "You guys turn the TV off." And both of them were laughing. So I said, "Valerie, what's funny?" She said, "You know, mommy rules the house." So I'm getting to a point. It is that most times it is when we water down the power of the women that we get the future wrong. When you water down the power of the women, you get the future wrong. So truly, yes, it's a fact that the women are the ones that nurse our future. Yes, sure.
Mr. Adeko?
Yes.
Okay, please take the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and happy International Women's Day. I hope I got that right. Just quickly on the side of levity, Dan and I sat next to each other all through the proceedings this morning, and between the Deputy Commissioner's address and the contributions that the panel members made, I kept touching Dan to say, it's not too late, we can still run. I think I would start off by saying that, so let me state first off that it's the future, it's not a fad. To complement what Alibaba just highlighted, I'm going to twist a little bit and actually use a personal anecdote, because I think that's very close and I can relate it in the best way possible. I've had the opportunity over my life to have been exposed to many women. So let me not go too far back, but I'll start with my grandmother, to my mother, to my wife, to many female friends, acquaintances, and relatives that I've had. And by the way, bosses that I've had. And I've come to this conclusion that from an informed perspective, I can't see what makes me as a man any better than a woman that sits next to me if given the same opportunity. And I'm not saying that to play to the house here. I've had the opportunity through my career to have had several bosses, and by and large, no prejudice to my boss who I'm looking at the corner of my eye here, 60% of my bosses have been women, and some of them have been the best bosses that I've had. They've been the smartest people that I've been around, very emotionally intelligent, very passionate. So all the things that we ascribe to what in some ways has perpetuated the stereotype that has pulled women back over time. There's stats that have been read out already, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but it does portend a very disappointing and discouraging trend. So if you looked at what WEF said in 2015, we needed about 113 years to close the gap. Now it's about, 217. So you almost just want to just bury your head in the sand and say this is completely, game over. But we cannot do that. I like to simplify things a bit. So if I use the analogy of a woman is my right hand and a man is my right hand. I think if I did a poll in this room and ask everyone that, would you rather have both? I would suggest that I think everyone, if not most of them, would say yes. So why would you think that should be different in terms of how we apply ourselves in the business place, in the social form? Because it gives us quality when you have that diversity in perspectives. As another additional point in terms of the closings that I had, one of my colleagues who certainly was recognized early on, Tino Awe, who was on the panel as well, I relate with her no different from any other man. And part of it has also been my upbringing, but also a conscious effort on my part to embrace that notion that if I cannot get to convince her on a particular matter, it has nothing to do with the gender at all. It just means I'm doing a poor job in convincing her. I know this is supposed to be just the introductory point, so I keep my comment short. One last point I'll make in my introductory comment here. And I think that theme was repeated a few times by a number of speakers about how all of us, and I think more specifically women, because I hate to say this, and I don't mean it in any other bad way, that you have the biggest skin in the game to change that imbalance. That you can't take this position of waiting for it to come to you. And I know that's not the intent, but it has to be more aggressive. I think if you look at the construct of equalities in general, whether it's racial or gender, the reality of it is the people in the club, in that exclusive club, the human tendency, human nature does not give the impetus for them to willingly give up or cede that space. So you have to demand it, you have to ask for it, you have to make specific efforts to sort of take it back, and it has to be consistent in terms of the effort. And I'll leave my comments to that for now.
So my colleagues on the panel have done all the hard work. They've taken the flak. I proceed from the point of fairness. I think this whole question of gender equality, as Mrs. Bofill said earlier, is really just the fundamental question of fairness. 50% of the world's population, give or take, for regional variations is female. I mean, what else should there be but fairness across all spheres, particularly in the workplace? And it's before I express my conclusion on the subject we've been asked, on the theme we've been asked to comment on, fact or fad, I will articulate my bona fides in the hope that this will protect me from being lynched. So my bona fides are that I practice law. I practice in a law firm, almost 80 lawyers, 50% female. At the partner level, 50% female. Just to be clear, it's half-half, okay? And the pipeline is 50%, the partner pipeline is 50% female. So those are my bona fides. But I still don't think the future is female. Okay. I think the future is more female. But I would be unable to sit here and say the future is female because I think that would be unfair. I think it would give preference to a particular gender when I don't think there should be such a preference. I think what we're aiming for is equality. So, yeah, I needed to say a few mitigating words. before articulating that. I won't preempt the questions that our moderator is going to ask, because I guess there are a lot of things that are going to bring us to that equality. So I'll let you.
In fact, my next question is about why have we been making for years the business case for gender equality, and things are not really changing? Because, you know, all the men we have in this panel seems to have a very good, good spirit in terms of promoting gender equality. So, in fact, when we decided to have this all-male panel, I was in favor of it. You know why? Because when men are together, they have another dynamic of thinking about things than when they are with female. I work with you and women. We have some men in our midst. But the time it takes to try to get them, only yesterday, through this, what we call deconstruction. So I was thinking, let alone those men who are out there. They may have a politically correct discourse when everybody is around, but in terms of action, sometimes the question is, what is being made? So my first question is, why do we think that things are not changing?
I'll go. I happen to have walked in the corridors of power in the last since 1999. I've been in the corridors of power because of the job and services that I provide. And at several times I have been allowed into some very key meetings. And one of such was at a time when someone was supposed to be appointed as Minister of Mines. This was in 2002. And when the lady's name came up, the first person to shoot it down was a woman. She said, what nonsense. What has she contributed to this party? You just bring in people on board. And they said, when I say they, I'm talking about OBJ. OBJ said, so give me 2 names of people who you think would do the job better as a woman leader. And the woman gave 3 male names. And Obasanjo said, okay, so put the 3 names down. And asked another lady what she thought. And that one suggested 2 other names. 1 male, 1 female. And the other woman rose up against the other woman that had been mentioned. What I'm trying to say is, the reason a lot of women get shut down, or the reason a lot of the things that you would discuss here don't get articulated or achieved, is because of some women as well. Have you seen women allow themselves in traffic? You're driving and another lady tries to cut in. You hear all these girls who only God knows where they got their money. Can you get out? I don't have other things to do. I should let you come and pass. Am I lying? So these are some of the things that happen. And then when you're trying to also raise a good child, some of these women either get attached. I'm born out of male syndrome dynamics as the first son after several girls. And all my sisters are girls. And all my sisters had okay, back then, before the war, this was my dad was born in a royal family of Agbaroto, and his mom had only him in the palace. And it meant that the land system was that you get only 1 plot of land because you have 1 male child. So while other women in the palace were getting 4 plots of land for farming, so you can use this for cassava, this one for pepper, this one for corn, my grandmother would get just 1 plot. And from that plot, she would manage it. She would plant cassava. Before they grow, she would plant pepper. Before the pepper grows, she would harvest her corn, take that out. So she was managing just 1 plot of land. And so she taught my dad from when he was young to make sure he has as many male children as possible. Madam, so do you know how this starts now? The women themselves know they've been disadvantaged because they didn't have male children. And so inculcate in their children to make sure they have a lot of male children because of the land dynamics at the time. These days, you also find out that a lot of women do the same thing. They have the first child, female, second, third, and then the man says, okay, that's enough. And the woman is saying, no, I must have one. Because she doesn't want all her children to bear the names of husbands, and then she will have no ties to the home. It happens. So the things that really tie women down and stopping them from articulating and achieving the future that we envisage as theirs are societal issues, education, culture, and most of all, religion. Religion is, I'm yet to see an Anglican bishop that is feminine. There will never be a female pope. Never. But let me tell you, if you get a female pope, when they're selecting her, the smoke won't be black. It will be pink. but that is the reality. It is that religion has eaten so deep into us that even in the Bible, you hear things like the man is the head of the home. And that permeates into our society. Do you think there will ever be a time that the Muslim women will sit in front for prayers? Oh, okay, so if it's Muslim, never. For Pope, yes. These are some of the things that we're talking about. So these are the issues. The women fight against themselves. The society believes that the women should stay behind. And education is also denied some of these women for them to even be better. I was talking to two friends of mine 2 weeks ago, and one of them said, oh, that he would have married that girl, but she's not so smart. I was like, I beg, you started all this, or if you don't like her, say you don't like her. When I met her, I was happy that he realized that he couldn't marry her. You know, there's a way vanity gets into a woman, and you can tell. We were talking, and she said, that your friend needs to change his phone. What kind of phone is that your friend? You need to mix with better people. I tell you, that lady will not raise a good child. Because her kind of, yes, it's materialistic. So the kind of people that we have, it's not just the society or politics that is keeping the women from achieving the future, even though I agree that they are the future, as fact. But the truth is that they've watered down their essence. Some, not all, some have watered down their, and then when you now produce even the good ones, the ones that produce the bad ones will let the bad ones water down what you have even produced. That's my take. It may not just go down with so many people.
Do you want to say a few words about that?
I'm not sure what else to add. I think Ali Baba has done and I'm not trying to patronize you, I think he's done a very good job articulating the different dimensions to why we are where we are today. And the interesting thing is, I think, as you look from one region to the other, so if you look at whether it's the Western world, so US, UK, to Africa, I think those issues that Ali Baba highlighted have different influences as to why we are where we are today. I want to focus a little bit more on, so what do we do about it? The parallel that maybe I'll try to use is if you look at the racial inequality that still exists, and I'm not trying to draw moral equivalence, but I can't come up with a better example, so I'm just going to use it anyway. I think one of the countries that probably sort of beats their chest in terms of, quote unquote, at least on paper, having advanced significantly in correcting the ills, to my understanding, would be the United States of America. very strong underpinning of that is the affirmative action initiative that started years back that tried to institutionalize that effort to correct that imbalance. And even despite that, in 2018, it's still not anywhere near where it needs to be, because there's still not that collective embrace of we need to change things and these are the benefits for changing it. So where I'm going with this is I'm not suggesting that we get into the point where we start creating quotas for women versus men, because that also has its own drawbacks. But I think there has to be a more deliberate way of drawing out the benefits of why, to quote Dan's comment about fairness, why the fairness that is being asked of here to have a 50-50 reflection on the partners base, on the pipeline base, and if you now want to even go into the board level, the value that the business derives from having that 50, that it's real. It's not some ephemeral, feel-good things. And so the more of those things that can be showcased, that if you have a board where there's a lot more diversity and it equates to better governance, better profitability and all that, I think over time that message with complementary measures, where, for instance, even as part of your we certainly have talked up quite a bit of corporate governance rating system of recent at the NSC, where as people look at those companies as to what companies do I want to invest in, what companies do I want to work for, people start to look at that metric, that what's the balance. We're not there yet, because Rome wasn't burnt in one day, so it's not going to be built in one day. So there has to be patience to understand that if the progress doesn't seem like it's fast enough, and I don't know who made the comment about it seems like we take one step back and two steps back, we cannot lose sight of those progress points that we've achieved over time, because success begets success. So the more of those you can highlight, the more of those that you can showcase, it gives the signal that there's actually value, not just at the individual level, but as a collective community, that it would help to sort of advance the course. Thank you.
Mr. Agbo, we know that progress should not only be made within the corporate world. So in terms of corporate social responsibility, what do you think the private sector should do to try more to promote gender equality generally?
I think it all starts with, education. Education education means that you give the girl child at least an equal opportunity to progress. I think I'm very keen on fairness, and every time I go to my village and I see a pregnant child, baby actually, it wounds me. And so part of that education is also sex education, because the truth of it is that, the unfair truth of it is that boys don't get pregnant. And girls do, for doing exactly the same thing. No fault, just equality. One person carries the consequences of that equality for the rest of their lives. Okay. So I think that honestly, I think it's education of the children. I think it's also education of the people that will give these children opportunity. So if I can just come to this question of what is holding women back. When I look at this room, I think it's Mrs. Makinde who said, power, is it Mrs. Makinde? Makinwa, I'm sorry, who said you have to take power. Actually, I don't think so. You have to negotiate it. And you don't negotiate with yourself. You negotiate with your counterparties. The people who represent 50% of the population. Where are they? They're not here. We're talking and I'm an honorary woman today, we're talking to ourselves. The converted are talking to the converted. Where are the potential converts? They're not here because this room is 90% female. We need to have a conversation with the people who are not converted. And the reason we need to have a conversation with the people who are not converted is because they need to buy into the fact that women, and if my daughter was here, she would lynch me for saying this, women need some help at some times. Okay, so it's 50-50. If I look at most organizations, I don't know, stock exchange, in terms of your employment, is it 50-50 roughly? 1 to 2. Banks is almost 50-50. Many Nigeria commercial law firms in Nigeria, it's 50-50. I know a number of organizations that are 50-50 here at the starting point. When you get to the top, it thins. It becomes 80-20 in favor of men, 70-30. The question is, why does that happen? There are many reasons why it happens. Now, how can those things change? Those things can only change if you have leaders, and they are going to be predominantly, at the start, male leaders who understand the need to support those things. Okay. And those things that make it possible for women to stay in the workplace. I think we look. I only heard about lactation rooms. Is there anybody here who doesn't know what a lactation room is? I only heard about. I'd never even heard about it before. Well, do you know what a lactation room is? I don't know. but you see, and I actually felt, and I'm reasonably clued in. Gender said I'd never actually heard of a lactation room. And when I heard about lactation room, I thought, actually, how can any organization not have a lactation room? But most men don't know. Now, in our organization, we didn't need a lactation room because we have a creche. So maybe that's why it didn't come up. But you need the men. Okay? It's the men with a conversation about the moral, social, and economic benefits that will help you achieve the change. And once the women are up there, the women need to reach down and pull the other women up. Okay.
Thank you. Of course, we did the men, and our Secretary General is one of these men, even the former one. They did a lot of things to promote gender equality, because the men are those who have power. When you have power, it's easier for you to push. I have one last question for Mr. Ali-Baba before we open for, only for you, Mr. It's about entertainment, because, when we look at all these movies, all these sketch, etc., they portray women so badly. And it has impact on us, on our children, on everybody. Because, I see people who spend, have a day in front of these movies, etc. So what should we do for things to change, for women to be best portrayed by this?
All right. The first thing I would say is that we all know that sex sells. Sex sells so badly that it took the life of John the Baptist. Oh, if you don't get it, let me push it this way. You understand? This woman danced so well that her belly was moving and all her body was moving. And when the man said, anything you want me to do for you, I will do. And it was John the Baptist. For what? Okay. That said, I work as an MC, a comedian sometimes when they call me. And if I'm supposed to work somewhere, and I say, okay, I'm busy. Can I suggest someone? And the woman says, well, it's my 50th. I need somebody who can do the job well. And I suggest a lady comedian or MC. You hear her go, oh, no. You don't have any other male comedian or MC that can do it. It happens in my business a lot. Now, regarding how women are portrayed on TV, I say sex sells. There are people who have programs and do not have sponsorship. They've pursued sponsorship. I mean, programs that elevate women, that appreciate and celebrate women who are doing wonderfully well, that will be brought on the program and interview them. No sponsorship. But Big Brother will get sponsorship. Because there's shower hour, or if there's no shower hour, they know that certain things will go on and this thing that will make them watch the show. The same thing applies to music videos. You shoot a music video that shows Cobams playing the piano on the street, and he doesn't get repeat play. You probably see that video once in a while. And then the one where they're shaking bum and showing cleavage and everything is getting a lot more airplay. And so, Timi Dakolo does a song that is a wonderful song that should be the third stanza of the national anthem. It doesn't get airplay. And I'm trying to edit what I wanted to say. But okay, no. One corner is even, but somebody then does a song that says, "Shake that thing that your mama gave you, shake it. That is how I want it." Like that. Those are all very dirty things, madam. So just and this song gets all the airplays that he wants. In fact, the music video is downloaded by many more people than they download Cobam's song. So that's why I say sex sells. And in these days where people do not want quality, they just want the trending issues, it means that it will continue to get airplay. It's not that we want the women to play bad roles in movies or music videos, but it is what sells. So when you then go out of it and say, okay, let's do something else. Somebody was on my page one time and I posted something and I said, why would you, a lady, be using such swear words? Because words that you can't pray to your God with, you can't use them in a conversation. And she went gaga on me and I blocked her. And two of her friends saw me at an event another time and said, because of all what she just said, you just blocked her. You know, she didn't do anything. She wasn't talking to you. I said, no, she wasn't talking to me, but she used such foul language on my page. I'm talking of women defending somebody who did something wrong. So it also means that some of these ladies also want to watch those. They want to watch it because if About Women Riot was women protesting against tax, but really it was women making themselves heard about something that was going wrong. But these days, if you post anything and say, oh, the woman's, her cleavage was too deep, you will hear women tell you it's her body. So what it means is that women are also fighting for freedom to expose their body. So when somebody now tries to even correct it, you now become the feminism kicks in. They say, it's our body, what's wrong with you? Chill out. The other day, I was talking with someone and he said something happened in his organization and he was very upset about it and told this lady, can you imagine they want to post this lady to somewhere in the north that she has never been to before, and they're teasing her with moving her from banking officer to assistant manager, that if I'm the one, I won't take it. And she will now leave her bobo in Lagos to go to this. And the lady turned down the offer because she wanted to stay with her bobo here in Lagos. So when she did that, when she did that, in about 4 months later, I think 4 months later, the relationship packed up. But what was it that made her want to stay? It was because she said there's a girl who has a lot more assets and shows off a lot more. And so if she's not in the face of her bobo here, that the girl will win. That says sex sells. So Madam Moderator, you can't blame the entertainment industry, really. It is what sells. The people who have programs that would not catch on now on TV, music videos that will not get airplay. But as soon as we introduce some real tools shaking things in the music video, you get a lot of airplay. So it is actually beyond us. I watch it sometimes, but it's not like.
Thank you. I was not only talking about this aspect, but also I was also talking about the fact that the women are so demeaning, like, we don't have brain. Even men will come and give us advice on the best oil to
Women are very intelligent. When I was in school, in secondary and primary school, I used to come 5th or 6th or 7th, and then anytime I get into the 5th, then it means that one girl didn't come to school. They make first, second, third position. They're very intelligent.
Okay, thank you. So now I think I'll hand over to the MC to give the floor to those who have questions.
Please give our panelists and our moderator a round of applause. Wow, so I did mention before the panel started that it would be wise if we could put all our questions down on a piece of paper, hand them to an usher close to you. If you can find some of the male ushers, please give it to them.
Olumide.
Yeah, there. Okay, yes, please hand it over so that we can get through the questions.
But this is not equality.
My name is Messi Amina. My question is not really like a question. I just want to ask if I know you mentioned when she asked, you mentioned about the entertainment industry and that sex sells. So how do we explain an Adele?
Okay.
How do we explain an Adele? I just want to know. Can we, or an Asha, how do we explain
All
it?
right. I can. Should we wait to take all the questions?
I believe that is wise.
My name is Ngozi Okwe. I'm a public relations professional. And then I want to believe that everybody on the panel is a father. And so I'm going to ask a question relating to marriage. You have a daughter, and while she's growing up with you, you have to defend her from a boy bully in school. And then you rush there, to pull your father's string, even if they don't hold you, you might even beat the boy child, because it's your daughter. Now, after your daughter gets married, and then her husband is bullying her at home, she's receiving maybe not physical abuse, emotional abuse, which some people don't know is worse than physical. And then she comes back to you, telling you how she's been going through all this. And then you tell her to go back there and go and stay married. Because you're a leader in church, you don't want people to see you as, not being able to control your daughter and all that. How do you explain that as a father? How should, your daughter be able to deal with such a situation? And it's happening in the rural areas. Like she said, it's not about the corporate world, the urban cities. And then it's not about the urban cities alone. It has to do with the rural areas where these women are not even educated, so they have to even just be there, receiving all the beatings and all the everything. So I want to understand, as a father, how will you handle that? Will you be able to stand the fact that your daughter is out of her husband's house because the man could not put his hands to himself, or he could not stand up to be a man? Then I also want to say something about women having to put each other down. I think it's true, it's real. Like the woman there said, a woman will tell you if your boss is a woman, then you're in for it. And yes, it's true. But the woman who is also a boss should also learn to, tolerate her other woman. Don't see her as a competition. See her as someone you have to. Honestly, men bosses, they do very well. And not because they make conscious effort to make their female staff feel good. So I think women too should also make conscious effort. Don't see your staff as a competitor. See her as someone you're going to mentor. See her as someone you want to grow. Like Mrs. Fashola said, hold another woman when you're climbing up so it doesn't get too lonely up there. So I don't know if you can address the father situation and marriage.
I just feel like it's important to push back against this idea because it's been repeated so often today, and I think it's a dangerous idea that women are their own worst enemies. In fact, I think it's a sexist idea because we cannot acknowledge that as a society or in our culture, we devalue women and we devalue femininity and act surprised that women devalue women if we all are socialized to believe that there is something somehow lesser in femininity. Then it's not exceptional that some women hold on to these ideas. If we actually want to think about changing our society, then we need to talk about who stands to gain when women devalue other women. For whose benefit is it that women are devalued? And it is men. We talk about, oh, the side chick is the one that is hurting another woman, and erase the primary actor, who is the man in question, who has been given social space to do things that are unethical and escape accountability because he knows that in our culture, women are hyper responsible for everyone's actions and men are overgrown babies. I think that it is important to be honest about the dynamics in our society and what makes them possible, and to stop pretending like it's special that women believe the same things that men do about women in a society that teaches us unhealthy things about women. Thank you.
So I believe the first one was for the entertainment industry. How do you explain situations like the Adele situation? I'm not sure which direction you're going for,
No,
because
I get her.
All right.
All right, so how do you explain an Adele or an Asha situation? There are two things here. There's critical acclaim and there's popularity. A critical acclaim is, for instance, there's a movie called Manchester by the Sea. The beautiful movie. Go to the cinemas. There were like 4 people in the hall, 10 in the hall. But when you put another movie that has action, Fast and Furious, the place is full. And then when it gets to the Academy, the one that wins the award is Manchester by the Sea. It's not Fast and Furious. So what you're trying to compare now is oranges and apples. Adele is top-notch. She's a Simi Dakolo. She's a Sade Adu. But the one that people would go and see her concert is Lady Gaga. So there's a difference between critical acclaim and popularity factor. Those are two different things. Like I just mentioned to you, it's just like programs. The programs that really appeal to people who, okay, jazz music is for the discerning mind. Adele is for a discerning mind, and then just picks a few other people along. So if you have a concert at Mission Center and you put a jazz quartet on stage, it will not be as full as a Davido concert. So please don't get those mixed up. Regarding the issue about male bosses, I'll say that my wife is a bank ED, and when she joined, when she started the bank, she wanted a technical assistant, and she wanted a male technical assistant. And I told her, I said, do you remember what happened some years back? And she said, yes, because a man had just been appointed, and he saw somebody in IBTC that he wanted to employ as his own technical assistant, who would be traveling with him a lot more. The wife refused, that he cannot employ a woman as a technical assistant and be traveling with a woman. So when you're talking about how women hold other women down, she refused for that lady to work with her husband, even when she agreed that she had more value to bring to the man's table. Daughters, will protect our daughters. I would let he's the eldest here, and he boss.
Hey, listen, on this question of daughters, honestly, for those of you who are still bringing up young children, you need to bring up those young children, if they're girls, so that they don't believe that any stupid boy is better than them. That's, quite honestly, it starts from there. I remember my daughter is 23, and I remember one day in the car, and I think this was when Chris Brown had given Rihanna a black eye or something. And I said, said, it's terrible. How could Chris Brown have done something like that? And I was waiting for my audience to say, yes, I agree, it's terrible. Silence. I said, but don't you think it's terrible? She said, why didn't she slap him back? That was it. That was her attitude towards the matter. She didn't think that, Rihanna should have been the victim, So don't be a victim. Guys, the women here, strong women, you have the benefit of education. Honestly, you have the benefits of good jobs. If any stupid man is trying to play silly buggers with you, as the French would say, honestly, honestly, I'm not the one you're going to quote and say it's me that told you to. But honestly, that's what you go to school for.
To address the issue the lady raised about women not putting women down, it is a lady behind there that had the question and thinks that it's men that are actually giving the impression that it's women that are the victims. So men are pretending. You see, there's a lady called Sarah Jibrin that ran for the presidency of this country. She got one vote. She got one vote, one. And she had a woman leader. She had the chairman of her campaign committee was a woman, and she had like 5 other people. She spent close to 360 million or thereabout. But in any case, she got one vote. You know why she got one vote? She voted for herself, but all the other women thought she probably would get about like 20 or 30 votes, and they could hide under those 20 votes to say, oh, we contributed our bits. People did not vote for you. But as fate would have it, she had one vote. And she went to meet Jonathan after the election and told Jonathan, this was what I paid. This was what I gave them to actualize my dream as a presidential candidate in the primaries. And she got one vote. And Jonathan made all the women that worked with her and the men refund her money. So when you say it is not women that are helping to bring down some other women, I doubt it. If you know the wicked women that we have, they will see to it that another woman's dream does not fly. They will see to it that another woman's dream does not fly. Is it me that stole another woman's child in the Bible and Solomon had to come and intervene?
As funny as it sounds, it's not funny. It's not funny at all.
I think.
I think there are some other questions. Some other people wanted to ask some questions now.
Can I just comment on that real quickly, if you don't mind?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
apologies.
And I, with all due respect to my brother here, Ali Baba, and the lady that also did pose that comment, I think what probably unfortunately gets lost in translation is that we walk out of here and make this assumption that it's one issue that's causing this gap that we're trying to fix. The answer is it's in the middle. It's a combination of several things. And so I think just like many issues in life, there's no one size fit all solution. We have to recognize that there are different dimensions to this problem, and so the solution would also require one dimension. Not all women are evil, and not all men are evil as well. Okay.
Thanks for having me. I apologize for being insistent. Maybe it's because I'm
Please don't apologize for pressing for progress.
Because I'm a gender inclusion expert, so there are some things that are being thrown about that I'm not comfortable with. Number one, we should not make the mistake of thinking that every woman understands or is gender aware. Because that is one mistake that we make in corporate sector. Once you have a female ED, you believe, oh, she's serving the purpose of the women. It's not everybody that understands. Not everybody that understands the battles that we need to fight or the buttons that we need to press or the things that we need to advocate for. So that a woman is doing this doesn't mean that because she's a woman, she's a gender advocate, she's gender aware.
gender sensitive and pushing gender agendas. No. So we have women doing all those things. And it's a sociological theory that, and it's not peculiar to women, that says a people that are long oppressed, as in they've been oppressed over time, they have this natural tendency of pulling down anyone that want to escape from among them. So it's not just about the women now. If you have men that have been oppressed for a very long time, anyone that wants to come up out of them, where are you going? We are here together. So it's not peculiar. It's just that it's unfortunate that we have it manifesting, among women, maybe because in this climb or maybe in the scheme of things, they have been the one that have been oppressed for so long amongst men. Now, we have women that, because they don't understand, so they do the things that they do. So we've talked about negotiating power. For instance, my organization, we do gender advocacy in terms of infrastructure, because we believe that, okay, like I approached Lagos State and I said, excuse me, your buses are not gender friendly. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, because it also goes to the theme of this panel. I really applaud the guys for sitting on this hot seat. When you have the female as a future, you're having a problem. What we are looking for is a gender-aware future. It's a gender-sensitive future where you have both the men and the women together. If you cannot reverse things, you cannot displace the men and put the women, fine. It's just no, you can't. Because you can't displace, you can't hold down your right hand and say, my left hand keep working. It doesn't work that way. So both men and women need to work together. That is the kind of future that we are looking for. So we are going to be advocating for removal of gender blind spots, because that is our reality. We think about situations. We look at our community. We talk about the masses, talk about Nigerians. You talk about numbers as if they are just males. But for goodness sake, when you say a population of 100, you're talking about men and women. And once that sets into our consciousness, we become gender aware. We become gender sensitive. And then we can have the future that we're talking about. And then we begin to design strategies, policies, products and services in line with this, and we're going to have a better future, a better community. Now, when I said your bosses are not gender aware, like, what are you talking about? I said, our reality is that you have men, they said yes, you have women, and these women come in different stages and categories. You have the pregnant one, you have the one with kids. Once they bought this your large buses or this your BRTs, tell me where the woman with the pram is going to sit. Tell me where the obese woman is going to sit. Because these are no, for instance, you bought some planes and your partner, your neighbor is sitting right on your lap because those seats are too small. And maybe because it's not a, I don't know. But these are the things that we should be, we need to start looking at. So by the time I met, and I said, even the disabled cannot even board your buses. The last one that they brought in, they said, Madam, the buses now have ramp. I said, thank you very much. And so is there still space for the pram? Because when we begin to consider this, that is our reality. That is removing the gender blind spot. When you build a place, when you build a public toilet, where is the place for a nursing mother to change the diapers of her baby? That is a gender-aware society. And that is a society that accommodates all, and that is the society that we should be working for. And so, we said, in the course of our advocacy, when I say, oh, gender inclusion in infrastructure, you have come again. I said, no. I don't want you to make the mistakes before we correct them. Can we get the women on board in drafting this infrastructure agenda for states, for nation, and for Europe of Africa? I said, okay, so where are the women? Because that is the easiest answer they'll give. So you should bring where are the women? I said, don't worry, I'll get them. And in the last 2 years, I've been pulling together a database of experts in infrastructure delivery, women in infrastructure community, that will be launching even on the 29th. So, please, we should not make that mistake to think that the women come when they are born. They come with that gender awareness. It's not born. Our society, our conditioning over time has made us to think like the men, and we act the way we act. Thank you very much for your time.
My name is Abiola Bolarinwa. My question is for the men, and the men on the panel today are very enlightened, but in the halls of power, which are still predominantly very male and very establishment, how do you think they are going to be willing to let women in? After all, we've been talking about this for years, and nothing much has changed. It's only gotten worse. So how will they be receptive to having, in essence, power taken from them? Thank you.
I think I want to directly ask Dr. Dan Agbo. He did say something that we can't take power, but that we needed to negotiate power. For me, I've been trying to think, how do you negotiate from a disadvantaged position? Because I think that's very critical for the women folk right now. It's obvious that we are disadvantaged now. I don't know, recently, I think sometime in 2017, I was really bothered about the frequency of the incidents of young girls being given up to husbands unwillingly in the northern part of Nigeria. I don't know how many of us heard of such incidents. It was rampant, and so many of them unwillingly put into marriage. We have all that incident around. I don't know how the women folk can negotiate from a disadvantage. I think that by all means, we need to get to a certain position of power before we can now negotiate. So that space, we still need to give the women by creating this equality, I think. Thank you.
So our panelists have the floor.
Okay, quick one. When you say, how can we have the men to be receptive to the yielding of power? One is by awareness, and raising good children is another good thing. Using education. Education is very important. We had domestic violence walk one time, and as we're walking to the governor's lodge, the governor's office in Alausa, some of the men that were cleaning the drainages that saw us walking said, and then they wear trousers. What that just spoke to me was that a lot of men still need to be educated on the fact that she's wearing a trouser does not make her a rape candidate. I don't know if you get my point. So there's need for education. Then the other thing is arts should be used greatly. Stage plays, television, like she said, a lot of men who are the ones producing some of these music videos and all the rest of it need to be educated to produce better music videos and stage plays and songs. I think you can do it through NBC. If you can ban a song that criticizes, that promotes alcohol or smoking of science students, is it science students? So if you can stop a song like that, then it means that you can also put a ban on a song that belittles women or brings them down. Yeah? So, and then getting to policy makers is important. A lot of women make their way through to the point where they are close to the corridors of power. But the issues that they then discuss when they get there then differs from why they even got to the corridors of power. Like somebody made a point that the fact that a person is an ED or a woman has risen to the point of being an ED or a chairman or MD of a bank doesn't make her gender sensitive. She probably got there and doesn't like women at all. She probably got there and feels that it's her own time to pay back the woman that made her not marry one other man some time back. But that's it. So we think that it's informing the men, educating them properly, and then creating an awareness just like this one. But I think the message will get through finally.
I think my my contribution to this question is, and I think I stated that earlier on in one of my comments, about when you're trying to effect change, especially for change that the solution requires a long-term sustainable one, you have to give evidence. So there's a common phrase that I think most of you may have heard, which is, in God we trust, everyone else has to provide data. So if you go into a club that exclusively has always been men, and you're trying to make the argument to expand that to now include women, one of the ways that, and I'm just using this as an example, one of the ways that you can demonstrate the value that, quote unquote, this all men's club would have is you have a broader base in terms of membership that helps grow the pot. So it sounds like a simple example, but I think in every way that we look at opening that door and ensuring that that door remain open, then, I mean, the one thing that when you talk to business people that is very difficult to have a counter argument is that if it makes economic sense, over time it becomes increasingly difficult to fight it. So I believe, for those that are in the room that are corporate governance experts, the idea that over the years we're starting to see more women representation on boards, and some of them even having them as chairperson, has not been because of tokenism. Hasn't been because of the feel-good aspect of it would just be nice to have them. It's because there's now evidence that clearly shows that these are very, competent people that add value, and it's not just, okay, we need to make it 50-50, so just go bring a bunch of women to sort of add up the number, and there's not an effective result that comes out of it. So I'm in alignment with the training also, but at the end of the day, and I know I'm just focusing on the business side, but you can also even apply that to the social side as well, that there is some way that you have to sort of demonstrate over time the value of having a more inclusive community.
Look, this is not a problem, or call it a problem. This is not a problem that has just arisen. It's millennia old. It's going to take years to reverse. So I like Bola's response to the question of how do you negotiate from a position of disadvantage, and I think people only change if they think that it's in their benefit, that they have a benefit. So how do you persuade men to let you get your foot in the door? You show them that it makes good economic sense for them for it to happen. That's how you do it. The numbers, the stats are important, but it's also important when a woman gets an opportunity. And I hate to put this burden on you, but it's also important when a woman gets an opportunity to show those male bosses that, quite frankly, this is what you've been missing. And to show those male bosses that you are capable of delivering at a level that far exceeds the performance that your male counterparts have to do. That demonstrates to the men that there is an economic benefit in this change, that, in allowing this negotiation to take place. Look, if a minority cannot cannot acquire power through negotiation, what are the chances that that minority are going to acquire power through confrontation? Probably it's not going to happen. Think about it. So I believe in conversations. I believe in negotiation. I have seen it demonstrated. I've seen organizations where there is a large complement of women, and quite frankly, it's not tokenism. Those organizations would not have it any other way, okay? So if it's possible in one organization or more, quite frankly, I don't see any reason why equality cannot be the order of the day. So that's my view of it, that negotiation is possible. Not easy, not immediate, but is possible.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something, as the last speaker put it very well. Like, men have centuries of advance, experience, tradition, and they have to keep that in mind. It's just too easy to say that. I always say that I'm from a family where my great-grandfather was a lawyer. My grandma could not read. My mom went to school, you see? So these traditions that male have had, it's the same thing in the business world. Everywhere, even in terms of leadership, women have to be aware of something. We are lacking something in terms of leadership. and we have to build, more trust, etc. But also, men should know, so most of the time, oh, woman, you should have done this, that. So how? Men have, when we talk about tradition, it means that it has been there for a long time, passed through, exactly. And it is not easy. Like, we have to go through the deconstruction process together, men and women. We have to know that as women, we have been, raised in a society that has expectation from women. And also men, be aware of that. In the gender work we are doing, we think that we have not done enough work analyzing the construction of masculinity. Because most of the effort has been put on women, social relation, etc. But what does it take to be a man? Sometimes I laugh when people say, oh, it's women who are educating boys and girls. But we educate boys and girls based on rules and regulations already set up by the society. If your daughter is not behaving in a certain way, they will tell you, how is your daughter behaving this way? So it is not just because, my parents are from Saint Louis, and being a feminist activist, every time, no, a woman should walk, softly, talk softly, etc. So these are norms. So people were accusing my mom of not raising a woman, yes, because she's not raising me based on the norms set up by society. So it's just too easy to say, yes, woman, you can stop female genital mutilation because you are the one doing it. If it tells that, women will tell you, men are just talking. There's the one at night who tells us, my daughter has to be, but when you come, says, this is a woman who are doing it, talk to your woman. So we need to know that we have to be in together. Let's go through our deconstruction process, and also let's go through the reconstruction together. Thank you.
All right. As quickly as possible, I'd like to throw a question myself. I'm thinking about the issue of compromise. Now, from the women's side, is compromise ever okay? Let me give a scenario. I actually have 2 or 3 acquaintances who are master's holders. One of them actually has a PhD, but they are from the southeastern part of Nigeria and have been informed that they cannot pursue their careers any further than just sitting in the class and getting the certificate. And 2 out of 3 of them have been told that, don't worry, I'll open a boutique for you. You want to run a boutique with a PhD? Is compromise ever okay?
During the days of Citizens Bank was when 419 was really very strong. I mean, like 91, 92, 93, 94, 419 was really very strong. And a lot of ladies at that time fell into the trap of marrying a lot of those men who were 419s. All right, madam, you know what I'm talking about. Now, and a lot of these people, the bulk of them were in Festac. The bulk of them were in Festac. Some moved to Ogudu, some moved to Magodo, but that was the head, in fact, the headquarters was in Festac. And they bought all kinds of massive houses and built all kinds of massive houses, which later, and when they got arrested, some died, some were killed by the counter groups who also felt like you cheated me out of this money, killed them. 2 of the bankers then that were working in Citizens Bank with my wife had retired fully to become full-time housewives. 4 years down the line, the man who is the 419 guy gets jailed. The money that was coming in, since it was not legit, stopped. And the woman came back. At this time, my wife had joined Bank PHB, came back to ask my wife, is it possible for her to start working again? That was somebody that had a job that she was doing before. There's some who then get married totally from secondary school or university and don't work at all. And now you're burdened with 3, 4, 5 children that you now have to cater for by yourself. You see, a lot of compromises have to be taken. You need to first know that when the man says, oh, whether you have PhD or a degree or not, you can't work under my house rules. You can't work. There's some men who even refuse for their women to be posted to certain places or get promoted, because when you get promoted, you get to... And so such women are limited by the husband that they've married, which is why we say, when you want to marry somebody, make sure you know the kind of person that he is. Some may hide their true colors, but as soon as you see that he's somebody who beats you or is violent to you, walk. It's not by force. Please, the compromise that you will make when you become a wife to someone should not be one that stops you from achieving the potentials that God has given to you. Shouldn't. You should actually marry someone that encourages you to... You know, it gets to a point where some people say, it's easy for you to say because you have money. I've heard that from men before. I was telling a man once, I said, let your wife do what she wants to do. He said, why are you talking like that? Because she wanted to do a master's. And the guy was like, the first degree she has, is it not enough? Me, is it not first degree that I have? You just immediately know that he doesn't want the woman to have a master's because he has a first degree. If my wife wants to have PhD, fine. If she wants to have any other thing, fine. I think it's the kind of men that we have raised. It's the kind of men that we have raised that are giving us the kind of problems that we're having. I can imagine a Nigerian man saying he can't even see his wife becoming the MD of one place or working under an MD of a... And a man like that, she must come home every night to make eba. She must come home to... There's some men that don't eat any soup that is older than 1 day. And the house girl can't make it. What kind of punishment is that? And the man will still be claiming that he's supporting the wife too. So there are compromises that have to be made, my sister. Yeah? And if he's not making it, it's not by force now.
All right. Does anybody else have any other responses to the question? Is for those who just came back in, is compromise ever okay?
I think it's always hard to go after Alibaba. It's like phew. I think the only dimension that I would add to what Alibaba has articulated is, so I think the focus was on mostly around the man and being there to be supportive and understanding. But let me flip it back to who actually constitute the majority in this room, which is the women. I'll go to a very old refrain, which is one that says, know thyself, be thyself, and act thyself. So we go through life journey with many influences that make us who we are. And if at the end of that journey, whatever the milestone is, whether it's when you've met your boyfriend, you're about to get married, the point that I think like Alibaba was making about making sure you check back to what your value system is. And it applies to men as well. But I think since today's about women, I'm trying to bring it to, you have to make sure you don't lose sight of that. So there's those signals that are always there. And it's just as human beings, we tend to want to block them out because it's not expedient to deal with it. Alibaba says because it's a fine man. It could be a fine woman too now. That clouds your judgment in terms of my priority from the time I was a little child was I wanted to be a lawyer. And why anything or anyone would dampen that dream, whether it's a man or whatever. I mean, it's just going back to the point about you really haven't done that self-reflection to understand what is it that you want and why you want it. Let me be clear. This is not about not having compromise, because there's very little space in this world that we live where you don't have to compromise. You have to compromise. But it's understanding the position from which you are compromising from. Is it, you don't even know where your center point is. And so wherever the wind flows, you go with, or you have your own anchor point, which says, by the time I'm 35, I must have had my PhD. For whatever those reasons are, that's my goal. And the person will respect it. And if the person doesn't respect it, as I think Dan said earlier on, is it chic now or c'est la vie? Then you move on, because you have to maintain the sanctity of what you want as a person.
All right. Thank you very much. Please, let's give, in fact, a very hot round of applause to our panelists. who have braved the women's stage, and of course to the moderator, Aji, right? Adratu Fatu Ndaye. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. All protocols observed. My name is Bumi George. I am a dietitian and the CEO of Shredder Gang, a health and wellness company located here in Lagos. I'm here to talk about the link between health and fitness and success. I'm just going to tell you a little story about someone I met last week. And I always engage people about, living healthy lives. And he talked about how he eats anything and he works out once a week. And he was really impressed with himself that he worked out once a week and he eats whatever he wants. And he said he works out for 5 hours on Wednesday. So he plays football for 5 hours. And I said, you know what, I don't think that. I think that's amazing that you do that. But I don't think that to live a healthy life, you need to do more than that. I mean, you cannot bulk everything together in 5 hours in one day and say that you live a healthy life and then you do whatever it is that you want. So I'm going to ask us around this room, think about it. Do you think that you're fit and you're healthy? And around this room, I look at beautiful women, strong women, diligent women, hardworking women, and we're taking care of everybody. We're wives, we're sisters, we're mothers, we're cousins, and the bulk majority of a home is on our shoulders. And we most of us, forget about ourselves in the process. So I'm going to talk about 3 things that I want you to put into practice. First of all, it's your nutrition. So if you think about it, do you think that really you eat healthy? I'm just going to stop and just, wait for you to think about that. Do you think that you eat healthy? No? No? Okay. So I'm just going to, take us through a daily routine of a regular Nigerian woman who is a wife, who is a mother. I'm sorry if you're not, but you can actually identify with this a little bit. Maybe you have a mom or a sister who does this. I'm sure majority of us in this room are wives and mothers. So you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, or maybe even before that. Some of us wake up at 4:30, and you're up, you're waking up your children, you're giving them a bath, you're making their food, you're packing their lunch, and then they're off to school. And then you are stuck in Lagos traffic for the next hour and a half. If you leave, some people live as far as Ikorodu, and they're driving all the way in traffic, and they get to work, and they sit down. So now it's 8 o'clock, they're at work, they're not eating anything. Now remember, they've been up since 4:30, haven't eaten anything, stressed out because, some person, like they said before, didn't let them go in traffic or go ahead. Anyway, you sit down at your desk, you start your work, and you do nothing. I mean, you eat nothing. And the day goes by, and you probably have some coworker brings plantain chips. And you have that. Sounds familiar, right? And you have that. And then probably you haven't eaten anything after that. You probably go for lunch at 2 o'clock, and now you're ridiculously hungry. Now you're going to pile your plate with carbs. We love carbs. In Nigeria, we're such a carbohydrate culture. Everything is rice, pounded yam, semo. This sounds familiar, right? Yes. And then lots of meat. You're like, give me that. Or you go to, around here, it's just like Ghana High. I know a lot of people love Ghana High, and they say, give me 100 naira rice and give me 6 pieces of meat. Very, very, very common. And then you go about your day. You get home probably, you drive again in traffic. You get home at 9 o'clock, and then you pile your plate again with carbs again. And then you go to bed. And then you do this for 10 years. And you find out that you're 40 or you're 45. And you find so many people who are then now having diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Different people are now, having, cancer because of their lifestyle. And then you think about it, and some people say, somebody is doing them from their village, things like that. But the truth about it is that your lifestyle it's everything is coming together to it's unhealthy. So I really just want us to think about this. Do you know that every 2 weeks your body makes new cells? Did you know that? New cells every 2 weeks, and a big percentage of the cell formation is from the food and what you drink. Everything that goes into your body. So you need to think about your body. I'm going to be a little churchy right now and look at it as a temple. You need to take care of your body. Now, so the first thing we talked about was nutrition. I'm going to go to exercise. How many of us exercise? That's the exercise.
you probably don't exercise, like maybe only 5 people. And I can understand because we live such a very, very busy lifestyle that we can't afford to exercise. But the truth about it is that we need, for optimal lifestyle, for optimal healthy life, we need to exercise. Like I understand, I have 2 young children. My youngest is just 8 months old, so I've only been sick for the past 2 weeks. I have not been able to work out. So I do understand. And you say, I can't make it to the gym because, there's nobody to look after my baby, or I can't. Why don't you just think about things that you can do at home? Buy a skipping rope and skip for 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be gym. You don't have to go to the gym and lift heavy dumbbells to say that you're then working out. Do something that you love. You love to play long tennis. Do that. You love to run. Some people love running because they say it helps them, clear their head space. Some people love doing Zumba. So just think about something that you love doing and do it. These things, even if you're doing it 3 times in a week, really you should be exercising 5 times a week. If you can exercise for 60 minutes 5 times a week, it's good. It's amazing. But if you can't do 5 times a week, at least do 3 times a week. Try to get 3 to 4 times a week in. Set it up like an appointment. So, for instance, you're meeting up with someone, you know that you have to make, if Dangote calls you now that he has one contract for you, you're going to be there. Even if it's 5 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be there. So, set it up like an appointment so that you don't miss it. And did you know that, actually, when you work, have you ever been sad after a workout? Never. Because whenever you work out, there's a hormone that releases endorphins that makes you happy. They're happy hormones. You never do a workout and say, oh, why did I do that workout? You're always happy after a workout. So it actually helps you deal with your stress. If you find out that you're stressed out at work, you have a Nigeria is very stressful. You have a stressful lifestyle, you have a busy job, you need to actually work out. So just make sure that you're getting at least 3 to 4 times a week exercise. Also, did you know that when you're stressed out, there's a chemical that releases in your brain that's called cortisol that then gives you belly fat. So some people, they'll say, I haven't even, I don't even eat that much. I'm just eating the same way for the past 10 years, but I just find that I have belly fat. Why? I met a event planner, a very big event planner. I'm sure most of you know her. And she told me that she doesn't understand why she just has a big belly. And she's very slim, but she has a very big belly. And I said, tell me about your lifestyle. Tell me what you do. And then she talks about how she doesn't sleep till 3 a.m. and at 5 o'clock she's up. And I said, I can already tell right away that you're stressed out. It has to do with her stress level. So because of how high the stress is in her job, it's then increasing her belly fat. So at this point, I told her it's not really about you eating, because she eats relatively healthy and she works out. It's about you managing your stress level. So we actually need to manage our stress level. I know it's hard. Most of us have kids. Try to put your kids to bed, earlier than you probably would, just so you can get an extra hour of sleep. I'm sure most of us sleep 4 hours, 5 hours. I'm sure most of us don't even get recommended 8 hours in a week. You do. Can I have your life, please? You get 8 hours. Wow, that's amazing. And that's good discipline as well. That's very good discipline, because most of us, and I guess also because, we live in a social media lifestyle right now. We're like checking our phones when we should be sleeping. We're like, checking Instagram now because, we haven't done it the whole day. We're checking Twitter. We're answering WhatsApp messages. But let's try and shut down early just so that we can get that rest. And this is just the 3 points that I have. I was only given 5 minutes, so I had to rush through that. I just want to encourage everyone to, put yourself first. Make life, health and wellness important in your life. Make it a priority. Make sure that you eat the right foods. For instance, as people who eat really high, carb diets, find out that they're really, really tired most times, So just, do some research. I applaud you. Google is your friend. Go on Google. Just find out the things that, that would help you live a healthier lifestyle. Exercise, manage your stress, and live a happy life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Shredder Gang. I love the name. Is it trademarked? Is it? All right. I was about to steal it. Okay. There's something else that releases endorphins. Receiving alert. So, I know my endorphins will be released very soon. Hint, hint. It's about time for us to take a vote of thanks. And I would like to remind everybody that there is a raffle draw coming up. And there's so many goodies here. In fact, the list is so long. Where do I start from? There are a lot of goodies up for grabs. Hopefully you still have your pieces pieces of paper. Don't worry, I got it. And the pieces of paper that have the numbers on it, please make sure you haven't lost it. If you lost it, sorry. We have, before the vote of thanks, we're going to take Miss Tosin Oladosu, who is from Art for Good. Please give her a round of applause.
Good afternoon. My name is Olutosin Oladosu Adebowale. I work in Ibasa village. It's a riverside community. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I was treated like trash, beaten and battered. And actually, I felt like trash. And in order to change the way I think about myself, I decided to use trash to create beautiful things. And I only work with abused women who were treated like trash, so that we can change trash to treasure and change abused women to assets in the society. I have trained more than 1,000 women free of charge, both in Nigeria and abroad. I'm so happy to be here, and I want to tell our women that we can do it. If we decide to speak out, there is help. People helped me. I was going insane, depressed for 7 years before I met sisters on World Pulse online, and they supported my dream. And for the past 7 years, I've been supporting women, training them and helping them to raise startup funds for their businesses. Thank you. You brought some pieces of fabrics, and I made them to create love, overflowing love for women and for men of progress. Thank you so much.
Now I have to say that is absolutely beautiful. Wow. Okay. I would like to call on Pai Gamde to give the closing remarks and vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're pressing for progress. First, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to give this closing remarks and votes of thanks on this auspicious occasion. And I believe that I speak for everyone here, including the men, by saying that energy has been released in this room. And I hope that we will take that energy and transform it into real value for ourselves. I also believe that the discussions we've had here go a long way in bridging identified gaps that relate to gender inequality. From the discussions, of course, foundations have been laid and platforms have been created for us to continue to push for progress, drive the progress, and lead the progress. What is required now is for the women folk to come to the table, to go to the marketplace in bodies of to go to the marketplace to every corner of our world, not in trickles of ones and twos, but in a mass movement, in bodies of entrepreneurs, bodies of intellectuals, bodies of politicians, bodies of scientists, and nation builders, so that we do not beg for crumbs. Rather, we pull, we negotiate, we rewrite, and implement the renewed rules of engagement. When the discussion was going on, they talked about if you're the only woman in the room, you're actually in the midst of wolves who could tear you down. So it's important that we as women take the women along with us as we ride up the ladder. Yes, we live in a male-dominated world, but we must refuse to be like the proverbial person who walks into a dark room and gropes in the dark when the light switch is just around the corner. Society is making room for us, and our dear men folk are acknowledging this. They're acknowledging our contributions on the world stage, and they're now demanding from us today. And we've seen that from the men who have sat at the podium. It's not enough for us to speak to ourselves. We must bring the men into the room. We must raise those men that we want to see. It is therefore incumbent upon us to rise to the challenge and restore order to all things. Why? Because female means I am human first. Why it matters? Because we matter. In closing, I'd like to thank our CEO, the enabler of this event, and the main protagonist of this initiative. Thank you. And he's not only the protagonist of this event or this initiative, but also many other people empowering initiatives. Mr. Oscar N. Onyema OON, we say thank you. I would also like to thank other members of the Executive Management Committee, Ms. Tinua Ade Awe, Executive Director Regulations. Okay, I see her right at the back. Women doing great things. I would also like to thank Mr. Bola Ade-Eko, Divisional Head Shared Services. Thank you for supporting women every year. You're there supporting us. Thank you. The Exchange also wishes to thank our keynote speakers who have seasoned this event with their knowledge. Her Excellency, former First Lady of Lagos State, Dame Abimbola Fashola. We say thank you, ma'am. I would also like to thank the Deputy British High Commissioner of Nigeria, Ms. Laura Burfors. She's not here, but please extend our thank you to her. I thank our panelists and the moderators of the panel discussions. I thank our spoken word poet. I know she's gone, but I think she did an amazing job. I felt like, how do you freeze that moment and replay it and replay it and replay it? I don't know if corporate comms can replay it for us at some point. Well, thank you. Lastly, I'd like to thank all of our attendees for taking the time out to be here with us. Your contributions and active participations have given more life and light to the discourse, and we're confident that the torches that have been lit in this room today will go out and light up others and illuminate the rest of the environment with the knowledge we have received here today. Once again, on behalf of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, we say thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your patience, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Godspeed.